you are speaking this evening, please sign in and also talk into the microphone and speak to the board. If you do need to speak with any matters with one another, please take it in the hallway. It interferes with our opportunity to hear those that are speaking. And as always, we're going to be courteous to one another and also cautious of time due to the length of our agenda for this evening. We're going to start this meeting first by asking for a motion to open.
I make a motion that we open the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation meeting for September 14th, 2015.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to the September 14th, 2015 meeting of the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Preservation. My name is Curtis Highsmith, and I am your chair. I'd like to introduce the panel that are here this evening. Unfortunately, Jeff Broadleib, as well as Esther Pastor, will not be here this evening, but we do have Brian Brady, Christina Redding. We have Zach Studenroth, our historic consultant, our legal counsel, Bo Robinson, and Antoinette, as well as Charlie. We'll welcome the two of you here as well. We're going to start this evening's meeting with signs and first application, please.
First application is Rosewood Developers for a contractor sign.
Good evening.
Your name for the record, please.
Anthony Porco, P-O-R-C-O.
Okay. Mr. Porco, you have name of your company, Developers Building Fine Homes and Quality. You have it looks to be a building, your name, 2 phone numbers, and a website.
Correct.
A little busy. We usually ask that our applicants, especially when it comes to contractor sign, tone it down a bit. Usually a telephone number, website, and the name of your company. I'll see if the board has any issue with the amount of information here, but for me, it would be a concern.
We can get rid of some of the information.
I'm sorry?
We can get rid of some of the information.
Okay. Well, first, the billboardish Bill's Homes of Distinction and Quality. Can we eliminate the tagline?
I could.
Board members, you have any issue with the sign is
That was my big objection, just that.
No, it's
slogan.
good. It's not
He's
an
got it.
advertisement, it's a sign.
okay?
Right.
So it would be with the elimination of your tagline.
The second line, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Any questions from the public? Motion to approve with the,
Second line, please.
yes.
I make a motion that we approve the contractor sign for Rosewood Developers with the second line eliminated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good luck.
Thank you. Good night now.
Concludes our sign permits for this evening. First application, historic. Council?
In the file is a decision written approving the application as submitted. An affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve the application. Brian, I think it's to the left of the, down on the floor. There's a, yeah, right on the top there. Yeah. So an affirmative vote on the motion would be to approve the application.
Okay. Motion to approve written decision by council, the approval of 784 Meadow Lane LLC.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by our council for 784 Meadow Lane LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We can't really see the next one because Brian has to recuse himself.
We do not have standing to open up the next application. So, application number 3. Council?
In the file is a decision approving the driveway gates as submitted. An affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve the gates.
Motion to approve written decision by council.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by our council for William and Ann Yorney on Culver Hill.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Next application is Elm Hill LLC for driveway gates.
Greetings.
Your
Mark
name for the
Cirillo
record?
for Autogate System.
These are iron gates? Iron gates?
They are aluminum,
The aluminum.
white picket style,
Spacing between the pickets?
6 inches.
6 inches?
Yes. I'm sorry, 6 inches center to center.
Okay. So how far is the spacing?
It's going to be 4.5.
Any lanterns or any type of,
No,
nothing? And the pillars are going to be,
they're going to be white with lead-coated copper caps, flat panels, 4 sides.
Brian, any comments?
No, I think it's very tasteful.
Christine?
No, thank you.
Any public comment in the application? We appreciate the transparency, we appreciate the application. You do realize the application is located in the historic district. Unfortunately, it requires a
Yes.
written decision.
One comment also is those gates will be 36 feet off the road, set back onto the property.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you.
So the application will be closed for written decision, which will be prepared at our next meeting. Any questions? Motion to close for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close the application of Elm Hill LLC on Gin Lane for written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Next application is 241 Hill Street LLC.
Good evening, Anthony Vermandois, 68 Union Street. First of all, I just have my affidavits of mailing and posting. Okay, so this house, I'm sure everyone is familiar with it. It's on 241 Full Street, excuse me. It is part of the old Rees Estate. Those of us of a certain age will know it as the old Cavallina House. We're proposing to do an addition to the rear of the existing house, removing a 10-foot by 25-foot one-story lean-to and building a 2-story addition out from that point, and a back porch.
Zach, have you had the opportunity to review and do a report? Is this a contributing structure? All right. Part of the requirement, unless, part of the requirement, especially within the historic district, is for a contributing structure is that our council, our historic consultant, do a report on the structure itself.
Okay.
Comes back at the next meeting, so therefore we'll have some information on the, not only on the structure, but on whether the addition has any impact to the historical structure itself.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
You know, I mean, we were kind of figuring this was going to be a process, so that's fine. Just any sort of general questions that I can address in the meantime?
As of right now, no. Unless the board, do you have any questions?
No.
Any public comment on the application? So Zach, you'll have something prepared at the next meeting?
Will we have any opportunity to see the report before the meeting or answer any questions?
Yes, I should have it in the file within a week.
Okay, and you'll give me a call if you have any questions?
I can.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Asking the board to adjourn so we can follow up, correct?
Sure.
Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant for 241 Hill Street LLC request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Next application is JAF 160 Ox Pasture Holdings for a bay window.
Is the applicant present? Oh, let's just keep the file.
Members.
Not that we don't know who you are, but your name for
I'm
the record.
CMX Sami, architect representing Mr. and Mrs. Jürgen Friedrich, 160 Ox Pasture. Linden is the name of the structure and the property designed by Rosemary Atterbury originally. I am submitting to the files affidavit of posting and mailing. The Friedrichs are undertaking minor renovation of the house, and I'll go through it item by item. There's 3 separate items. The house is a rambling house from one side to the other, so, and if I'm not mistaken, the drawings that I have in front is the same organization as you have over there. So I'll start with the easier ones. One is in the main dining room. The dining room has wood windows, and I'll submit these pictures that would make it much easier for you to understand. These wood windows and dining room is adjacent to the existing living room with metal doors and windows, and they are changing these windows exactly with the same arrangement to metal doors and windows to match the living room windows. And you can see in the following photograph examples of the living room window, which has lead divisions in it in the frame. That's one item. Next item is in the kitchen, which is in the rear of the building, south side of the building again. They're introducing a Dutch door through a small step going down to the patios, just to give access to the kitchen area. This is again a picture that I'm submitting. First picture is the existing, and the second picture is another door in the existing house, which we're replicating for that opening.
That's what a great house.
So you're changing the material from wood?
In this case, it's all staying wood. It's a wood Dutch door, replicating another Dutch door in the same house. The window to the far left, which is a small squarish window, that's coming out and replaced with that Dutch door. And in my drawings, you have elevations of that drawn up. And lastly, in the west wing of the property, there's the library that overlooks the collection of linden trees, hence the name of the property being the Linden. We are introducing a bay, glass enclosure bay on 3 sides, 6 foot deep by about 16 feet wide. Again, this is a photo of the existing. And in my drawings, you have both existing elevation and proposed elevation of the same bay.
Just copy that out.
What's the age of the house?
The age of the house is close to 100 years, a little bit less than 100.
So the question is,
Can I see those you have?
is
So
contributing?
the material that we're using for the windows on this bay are exactly the same type of windows that we're taking out. We're just extending it out 6 feet in, so we're replicating those same type of windows. The height of the windows, the width of the windows, again, if you look at my elevations, are exactly the same. The roof is a copper roof extended out from the stuccoed wall of the existing building.
Replacement windows, like in kind, why would it come before us?
Well, I had one question. It seemed like you said that some of the windows are leaded.
The living room windows and doors are leaded, and the dining room that is adjacent to that is wood, and we're replacing the dining room windows to match the living room windows that are lead. Correct.
But the door is changing.
But the door in the kitchen is separate item. That's
As is the bay window, which is.
Right.
Correct.
right. And the bay also is wood. It's not a metal. To match the existing wood windows and doors of the library.
Zach, this replacement windows, a couple of adjustments. Is it something that requires a full-out report? Does the addition to or of any new element change the historical significance of the structure?
These are fairly modest. This is a very large house.
Yes.
And so I don't think that the total impact of the architecture is compromised by these? These seems like relatively small adjustments.
Is this something you feel that requires a further in-depth review?
Not from what I've seen here, I don't think so.
Any public comment on the application? Anything further from the board?
No.
All right, doesn't seem there's any opposition of what the work that's being done. Therefore, we will close the application for written decision by council. So we gather information and get detail about the replacement, and council may also reach out to you just in case there's some question as to the exact material and what's being replaced.
The manufacturer of the metal doors and windows is Riley's, which is a reputable window manufacturer.
Very good. Motion to close for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close JAF 160 Oxpasture Holdings for written decision by our council.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next application, please.
Next application is 70 Elm LLC. You wanted to do these together?
You sure? It's your discretion. I would, on record, just make sure that we. Do you have 70 on?
Yes.
I think it should be part of the public record. And also seek council advice in terms of what we should,
Okay.
just for the full disclosure.
This is small sets.
Perfect. I'm such a headache.
Yeah?
Council, before we open the application fully, I think that Christine has just for the record,
Just for the record, this is my old house. I love it so much, but I feel that I can be impartial, and I'm not going to recuse myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Dick Bories. I'm an architect with the firm Bories and Sharon. This is my partner, James Sharon, and also with Quincy Hammond Landscape Architects. We have two presentations today. The property has three separate plots on it. So one is the front property is in the historic district, and the back property that we're proposing to put a house on is in the rear.
Okay.
So this is 70 Elm in the front. It goes all the way back to another two lots behind. So this is a proposal to add a new portico to the front porch, change the railing in the front porch, add two small lead-coated copper roofs over the rear and garage or driveway side doors, and extend the kitchen on the south side of the house with a bay window and another lead-coated copper roof, and shutters over throughout the house.
Okay, so right now, the open application is 70.
70 Elm.
Let's discuss 70.
Okay,
Just keep
that's
it-
all. 70 Elm. Yeah, we can hold those up.
Should I hold up the various drawings?
Sure.
I would start with the plan.
Hold on. Let me get
James, the first one.
this one.
Yeah.
This is the garden.
Yeah, but this is the property in question here.
Oh, okay.
This is 70 Elm.
We're familiar with the property.
Okay.
Okay. And these you have copies of?
Yes, so if you can identify what will be changed.
Dick's referencing the portico,
Okay.
the railing on the front, and then on the
Shutters.
side, and the shutters and all over. Along the side, the copper roof over the side door, lead-coated copper rather. And then on the back,
If you can turn that to the camera.
This one.
and then on the rear, or on the other side of the house, the small extension to the kitchen with a lead-coated copper, a kind of bay, continuing the shutters, change of the same railing everywhere, and then on the rear of the house, the addition of another lead-coated copper roof over the back door.
And replacing the existing French doors.
French
with a bay
doors with
window.
a bay window.
Yes.
That,
And no change to the color of the house.
Staying gray.
the gray stays the
Gray
same.
and the white railings.
What color are the shutters?
Black.
Black.
Other than the change in the front entryway of the portico, Zach, do you find that any of the changes, like the addition to the lead copper roof,
Zach,
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you, Curtis. I think we also need to factor in that there was a significant loss of a portion of this house to fire.
thank you for pointing that out again.
I,
oh no, that was my
In-
hope. For
in all-
35 years.
in all fairness. And so my only point, not wishing to bring this up, except to say that a lot of what we're looking at is new fabric, is substantially rebuilt.
Substantially, yeah.
So there's always a question in terms of impact on the architecture of the house, whether it is still in fact qualifies as a contributing resource in the district or not. That's not a formal procedure that we go through. I'm simply pointing out that if a building is substantially reconstructed, it is arguably not a historic building, and it is no longer therefore a contributing element in the district. And so my only point being, I think this is more of an aesthetic discussion than it is
You're
that
saying,
of
are you making I just so that I understand, you're saying because of the unfortunate incident, it no longer becomes, or is no longer a contributing structure within the historic district?
Correct. Well, I mean, that's, technically, we have many buildings in the historic district which are not contributing. They're either, they haven't achieved the age or architectural interest, or they have, through a passage of time, lost their integrity due to any number of factors. And so we don't have an official procedure for, reassessing the list and making that determination, but as a practical matter.
That's why I'm cautious of saying that it no longer is a
Well,
contributing.
what I'm saying in my judgment is if a building has been substantially lost and reconstructed, even if it has been rebuilt to appear substantially as it was to begin with, we're no longer looking at an old building. That's just a fact. And I would say that it's logical to review this in terms of the aesthetics of the alterations and additions, rather than the mindset of how does it impact the historic integrity of the building, if we know that it has lost that.
Okay.
That's
So-
subtle.
So the aesthetics of what's being presented, does it in fact relate to or is in keeping with the current aesthetic design, even period that is being interpreted? Well, it's,
I mean, in my opinion, it's rather Georgian and rather urban, and we are neither one. This is a Victorian house on a village street, so I think this is rather elaborate. That isn't to say it's not attractive or, isn't aesthetically pleasing. I'm just not sure that the columns, this is a house that probably had porch posts,
The
did it
columns
not,
of this, yeah.
at one time?
Presently has.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
look at the
So,
photograph.
so this sort of Georgetown-esque kind of entryway doesn't seem to be that happy a fit with a large Victorian house that has smaller porch posts turned, I guess, it's holding it.
What house is the
They're
same?
keeping the same post, they're adding,
These Doric columns are,
Yeah.
oh, they are, they're the same as the.
We saw it, if I may, as
Yeah.
a colonial
You have to step
revival.
forward.
Oh, excuse me.
it's okay.
We
And your
saw it
name?
as a Queen Anne style colonial revival addition, as the house has this sense of age and it's elaborated over the time and there are wings. we envision it as, because you kind of have to make up a story, because the house, a lot of it is, made up anyway, that the entrance would be something that happened, at the turn of the century in the colonial revival period. So it has, as you say, that kind of colonial Georgian aspect to it, but it takes from the existing
No, I
column.
didn't say that. I
No.
said it's a Victorian house. I didn't say it has a Georgian
I meant the
revival.
detail is in fact colonial and Georgian, you're right. So,
No, I disagree. There's, I don't see any colonial revival elements here or Georgian revival.
I mean, that's
think
what
it's
we're
Victorian.
doing.
We added those.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
If
exactly,
it's
that's our
accretion over
story.
time.
I
We
see.
had to pick a style, and we didn't want to
Yeah.
emulate the Victorian.
So as you say, so much of the house was erased, we thought
Right.
this would be a great way to show another aspect of what may have happened over time.
So it's an aesthetic.
And there's
Yeah.
several
Choice.
Queen Anne houses on that street, directly across the street, the house with the turret, or off to the left. So we pulled on those elements going down. So.
Right, so that's the detail with regards to the aesthetic, correct? There's there seems to be a elaborate landscape plan. Is there?
Yes, hi.
Okay.
I'm Quincy Hammond, landscape architect. We are planning a fairly extensive renovation of the existing landscape, including adding a motor court to the front of the house to expand upon what is there now, which is essentially just a driveway. Adding an additional privacy layer in the front of the house to help with the screening of the noise, street noise, and also screen the views of the power lines that are running just in front of the house. We are planning to have a hedge that runs from the front of the house down to the south property line. And we're adding a gate there, which Dick and James have designed. It's on the floor there. It's a small landscape gate, this gate.
Which wouldn't be seen from the street or anywhere.
It would be seen from the street, I think, from the southern driveway entrance.
I think from here,
I call it an arbor. This plan.
What
is-
angle?
this
Sorry,
angle here,
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
coming from the south,
here.
not probably from the north.
It would not have an arbor. It would be just a simple gate. I think it's about 6 feet tall. And a hedge.
Do you have existing,
Photographs? We do.
They're
sort of like before and after, kind of easier to judge that?
well, we have existing photographs up there.
I'm also seeing on your landscape plan you're proposing driveway gates on Elm Street.
I'm suggesting that, but we are not ready to apply for that at any point in time. So we may come back to you with that.
Can you really drive up and down Elm a few
Yes.
times and take a look before you introduce driveway gates? And just see if you see anything that remotely reminds you that driveway gates are acceptable in that community or that neighborhood?
That's a very good point. We have not done that. The client has not decided on driveway gates either, so
Okay.
if they're not there, I don't think that they would miss them.
Thank you.
Can I also ask, in this, I guess this is the proposed railing, is that opaque?
Yes.
No.
Oh, no, oh, excuse me.
Well, it sort of looks like a knee wall.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
no, we didn't show the windows behind it because it got too busy. Those are all pickets. Those are all square members.
I see. So you do see
Yeah,
through
you see,
this?
Yes.
that's all open work.
Just images
I
of
know.
other properties.
Any questions, Brian?
No, I think it's a beautiful renovation. Subtle and elegant, yeah.
Christine's any comment?
I think it's beautiful. I do. Thank you.
Any public comment on the application? Zach, anything further? Okay.
Thank you.
Really drive up and down Elm and the surrounding
I
community.
think they'll be happy not to do that. It's
Yeah.
a good excuse.
Yeah.
It's not before me now, and it's not before this board now, so I don't have.
They might
Um,
actually be thrilled with that.
Okay,
Can I just ask a quick question?
sure.
Is
Christine?
there really going to be a lawn checkerboard?
Yes, indeed.
It's so beautiful.
They have 3 children, so we're trying to make it fun.
It's
for them.
really lovely. Good.
Okay, nothing
It's a
further.
good house.
The application and property is located in the historic district. There's no opposition of this board to move any further, so we'll close the application for written decision by council. Any questions? Motion to close for written decision.
I make a motion that we close the application of 70 Elm LLC for written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good luck. Next application, please.
Next application is for Halcyon Lodge.
Good evening, Mary Jane Asato from Burke Flanagan Asato, 21 South Main Street. For the applicant, we also have the entire architectural team here, our historical, hold on. Rather than, we'll just go through the introductions, as well as Melissa Dedovich.
Should we be worried?
No, I think you are going to be very, very
Okay,
pleased.
you-
I'm going to do just a quick, let me just submit affidavit of posting and publication. I think that when we're done, that you're going to be very pleased. And the reason why is, I'm going to refresh your recollection. You had this property before you with the previous owner, before Halcyon Lodge, who was before you to tear down this house. They went through the initial stages where you said no, certificate of appropriateness, and then they made a hardship case, and you indicated that, all right, based on the hardship case, that they were allowed to remove the 2 wings to this house that were added on, the glass wing, and I'm not going to say the name because it created a lot of emotional, feelings at that time of the hearing, as well as the other, the wing on the opposite side. We are before you today with the new owners who have taken your decision on the hardship case to heart, and from the very inception started working with your historical consultant to basically fully renovate, restore this house, maintain everything but the glass addition, and to basically bring this back to its architectural accuracy, I believe is the right word. But rather than me, who's the lawyer, two-dimensional and on paper, I'm going to basically turn it over to the architects. I just want you to give the historical background here. I have a Board of Appeals application pending, because obviously, because it's in its current location, it required a wetlands permit for existing setbacks from both the dunes as well as the freshwater wetland, tidal wetlands, across the street. We have had hearings on that. There was not one objection. In fact, someone who has had difficulty with construction and development along the street surprisingly gave a full letter of support. I'm going to submit it into the record. It's from the owners of 466 Gin Lane, Mr. and Mrs. Neil Smith, if the name is familiar to you. So they have no objections to this application and feel that the applicant has done a really commendable job in coming forth here. I know that it's not your bailiwick, but we had great reception. The board was very receptive to the ZBA because we're fully upgrading the septic systems here that are backed to the dunes to make them not only compliant, but, for both the cottage, pre-existing cottage, which we're not really doing anything except interior, and totally putting in drainage systems and whatnot to basically modernize this house. Now, as a preface, I had the builder ask me at one point, it would be so much less expensive if we were able to just tear this whole thing down and do a truly 100% facsimile. And I said, no, you cannot do that. So obviously...
Good job.
No, because they say it would look exactly alike, et cetera. And we said, no, it doesn't work that way. So a great deal of effort, a great deal of thought, and a dialogue process has gotten us here. We do have pending the health department, which is subject to the village approvals. Everything is in place, and we'd like to have this dialogue with you to take your suggestions and present this to you. All right?
Thank you.
Will you just, before you speak, introduce?
Hi, I'm Ashley. This is Pietro Cicconiani, but
Ashley, your last
sorry,
name.
Ashley Corliss. Can I bring this up any closer? I
You
know
can
it's
leave
kind
it
of a small
right there,
font.
you can turn it
Okay.
around and... Zach, your name was mentioned as part of some of the dialogue that went up at this
No,
application.
I think you'd have to consult the record. I think what she was referring to is that there were reports put into the record,
Okay,
which basically, I think, stated our position with regard to preserving the house.
the core of the house.
Yes, I think.
Okay. And
It was-
the element that we shall not
No.
mention.
In the second decision that you had at the bottom.
Sure.
It actually stated that that they instructed the owner or whoever was the person to do not develop a project in vacuum, to actually consult. So if you read it was written and adopted that way. It wasn't just an advisory, well, it was advisory, but I assumed that it was a direction, because when somebody says don't, I can't quote the words, I think it was part of our packet, where it certainly directed whoever was gonna come before you to do things to this house, to have dialogue, because I took it as you didn't want to have us come here after we developed a plan without any going back and forth and looking at the decisions in the previous record and say, well, wait a minute, this is what we want to do. I mean, and we took that to heart is what I meant. I mean, there's not any sort of pre-decision. What we're saying is we looked at the entire record of what you said in the previous two applications.
You gather stuff from our file and you are
Yes.
following to
Yes.
the T some of the recommendations and reports that were in file.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. Pietro Cicognani, Cicognani Calla Architects. We have assembled a team. Ian Hanbach developed the landscape. Joel Snodgrass is our Long Island historian. Melissa Dodovich is our environmentalist, and then myself, Ashley, and Chloe are the architects. We're very proud of being working on this project. We learned to love this house. It's a derelict house, but we want to resurrect it and improve upon it and make it a symbol of what you had once and what it can be again. This house changed name many times, owners many times, and changed look many times. It was called Halcyon Lodge in 1893. It was called Lochiel after that, then Driftwood, then Domus Aurea, and now back to Halcyon. So we're taking the first name, and symbolically, it's significant because we want to go back to what this house once was. It's kind of falling down right now, so it's a big effort. And what I want to
Just to let you know, because I want you to present your application, we went over months
so you know it
of this
intimately.
application, so you do not have to go over
Understood,
the history.
understood.
We can get right to the architecture.
Completely understood.
Thank you.
So we want, unless you have questions later, the landscape, we're really trying to develop it in a way that it's
Just start with the architecture.
with the architecture.
What are you
Start with
changing?
the
What is
architecture.
this? What will the
These are
design?
photos that you know. I don't know if you've seen this photo. This photo is probably after 51, where there's a railing, so there's a terrace on here, there's an awning here. This is kind of the period that we want to attach ourselves to. And maybe the model together with these drawings and together with the materials probably will give you a taste of what we're trying to do. From the point of view of the fenestration, the point of view of the columns, of the trim detail, of the gable, we really want to go back to that moment in history what that black and white photo represents. We're exploring the possibility of wraparound porches, front and back, to come back to that era where porches were considered wonderful. And from a proportion of solid to void, meaning glass to solid, we're staying until around the 16% mark, and your guidelines are between 15 and 25, so we're staying on the low end on purpose. We don't want too much glass. In terms of material, Joel did the painting analysis of all the trim and the field, so we did all that, and we would like to go back to a color trim which is shown here by the sample.
What is current and what is being proposed?
Current is,
Now, on your drawing here, on the drawing,
On
we show
this.
show us the core of the house,
This
and
is
what
also-
portion of it is going to be the addition.
well, these are the proposed drawings or the proposed scheme.
Okay, so on that proposed drawing, what exists and what are you proposing to add?
Okay.
Can we maybe put it up here, it's easier?
You prefer here?
Fine.
So,
Anywhere,
and you know what, since I went through the ZBA presentation.
Okay. Well, that's easy to do.
Yeah, so,
I thought so.
This is existing. We're proposing this.
Okay,
This is existing. To here, we're proposing to wrap around here.
okay,
This is, you know what's there, this is all new. And this is the view from the sea.
so that's let's go north, south, east, and west, just so we have reference points.
Okay.
All right,
This
so-
is the south elevation.
Okay, so that's the
The
south
ocean.
elevation.
This is the east elevation, this is the west elevation.
Okay.
Existing, 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 new, new.
Okay,
Then here. This is the north elevation.
Just this photo.
Existing, existing, new, 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 new in the foreground, old in the, existing in the background.
that was helpful, thank you.
And one more,
Okay,
the east elevation. Existing, most of it is existing, new, new with less mass. The current mass is larger here that we're tearing down, so it's new with less mass.
so what is the square footage being removed and the square footage being added? Just for contextual mass.
We basically, the way we have the wraparound porches, we're adding a little bit to be able to wrap around on the south side. On the south side. On the north side, we have a new porch, so that's added.
I think she has it.
And then there's a chart in your
We submitted
submission.
with our packet a
Okay.
chart.
So for the
It's in your-
record, if we could say for the record what that
Okay.
is.
Basically, let me, the existing house total has been broken out where, basically what you have here is, the existing porch. I mean, it's a fairly extensive chart, so that's why.
I'm more interested, I think, overall in living, and I believe we would,
The increase in the interior heated space is 4.1%.
okay. Thank you.
We had to present that for the ZBA.
That's-
Essentially, the glass wing is coming down in its entirety. The new
Exactly.
addition is going to be FEMA compliant. The roofing is put in place, but there's no heated space in that area. It's to keep the architectural design to be cohesive.
Correct.
And the heated space is because of, there was an actually, on the area between the glass wing and the main house, there was an unheated, like, walkway.
Bridge.
That is being closed
Bridges.
in, and that is essentially pretty much what's comprising of what the minor increases are.
It's originally a one-story glass addition.
It's now,
Zach, what's being proposed, what the current, I mean, we've gone through months of this application and back and forth. You know, we thought we had a agreement that was reasonable, and it seems we even have a more reasonable agreement now, considering the change in direction and the look to really replicate and keep in style and in like and kind to what exists in the core of the house. Do you have any comments about the application in general, and do you feel that the changes are reasonable? And
I think they're entirely reasonable. What's kind of impressive is, I mean, when we see additions such as this, what we look for is something that's intentionally subservient to the main massing of the house, which was obviously understood by the applicants, and so that addition reads as a secondary extension. I mean, could have been there. It's styled in such a way that it's entirely sympathetic. I think also, my recollection's been months, but I remember that we understood this house to have evolved over time.
Yes.
It seemed from substantially, and I remember it vaguely as it perhaps raised up and got a whole new lowered story. I mean, the maps were difficult to read, but it was a complicated history. So, in a way, I kind of find this resolution to kind of pull it together in a way that makes it look a period piece, so to speak. I mean, I think it feels quite unified in the overall design now. I mean, you've added some porch areas, et cetera, but I think those are well meant and pull the whole design together. I think it's great. Very impressive.
I just want to point out to you that they didn't even take the option of removing both wings, that I said it would be really great if you could incorporate into your design as much as possible, even though there was permission given to take down both wings, considering that it is in the same vernacular, it's tradition, and they really took that to heart. And we do have our historical consultant here who did a lot of research and put a lot of input. I know that you have his advisory opinion, but if you'd like to know why we came to this place, certainly he's here to be able to
If
give
you
us
want
an
him to talk for
Yes,
purposes
I really would like
of paying
that.
him, but it doesn't seem like there's no opposition of this board. I mean, if it doesn't need to, it's your discretion, but it doesn't seem we have an option.
Chairman Highsmith, members of the board. I'm Joel Snodgrass. I'm an architectural conservator, and I think what I would add to this discussion is that the good news is that the client was very supportive of going down the process of using preservation as a guide. That doesn't always happen, so it's always a rewarding experience to be involved in that. From the beginning, the dialogue I had with the client through the architects was one of the need to be fully informed when you go down a design process. And it was completely supported to do all the research that was necessary and also do all the physical site investigation that was necessary. That was actually woven into the thought process from the very beginning. So the combination of not only looking at what the village has in terms of guidelines, but also looking at historic preservation precedent for what should be done and thought of in these types of cases, but then also looking at the physical fabric at the site, including a finishes analysis, looking at the windows, looking at the doors, looking at the roof types, looking at the cottage as a precedent for what was retained, what still exists. That was all woven together, and it was really put into a sort of an amalgamation of what influenced the way this proceeded and moved forward. This was a much more cooperative experience. It was wonderful to be involved in it because it was one where it was really embracing whatever could be taken as trying to endorse the right relationship with the board, because they knew that this was really one where there could be success by doing so. So it was a very successful honoring of preservation principles.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have our samples, if you have any questions.
Would you like to add more information on to the application?
I think-
There seems to be no opposition.
We have submitted a really comprehensive packet, because you were the sort of the last end, so I suppose.
But you're making it complicated.
Okay.
We're trying to. Is there any public comment on the application? Anything further from our historic consultant?
No, I think it's very simple.
Brian?
I think it's admirable.
Christine?
I have nothing to add. It's
Okay. Application is in a historic district, requires written decision by council. So we'll close the application for this evening so that we can have our council prepare a written decision.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Motion to close for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close Halcyon Lodge LLC at 436 Gin Lane for written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And our last historic application for the evening.
Anthony Punnett, 310 Hill Street.
Good evening. Ben Chaliff on behalf of the applicant, Chaliff and Rogers Architects. I don't know if you're familiar with the proposal. Relatively simple. 2 shed dormers to a non-contributing structure in the historic district. last deemed non-contributing in 2009, I think.
Did you see this?
Yeah. The materials would be continued as much as possible. Wood shingles painted white to match existing, and then the roofing would be a standing seam metal roof. The windows would be, from the plans, as you can see, divided lights to continue the same theme that's already there. Those windows are not original, they've already been replaced.
Yes. Zach, contributing, non-contributing structure in the historic district, really no.
No.
Any public comment on the application? Anything from
No,
board?
it's a simple addition, it's well done.
No, I
Christine?
looked at it this afternoon. It's simple and perfectly appropriate.
Application is located in the historic district, requires written decision. I can go through the whole entire thing, but it'll be at our next meeting, okay?
Wonderful, thank
Any
you very much.
questions?
No questions.
Motion to close the application for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close Anthony Pennant, the 310 Hill Street application for written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our historic applications for this evening. First application, non-historic.
First application's Robert Geary, 475 Hill Street.
Hello. Lisa Zaloga, I'm architect for Robert Gary. I have some drawing sets for you.
Mike, please.
Are these sets duplicate what you've already presented before this board?
Yes,
before?
they were put into the file on September 4th, last Friday.
Okay.
Lisa, do you have one for?
You should have extra. What's changed?
Okay, so at the last meeting we were talking about mass. If you go to page A5, you will see the front elevation and you will see a list of the things that we've changed over time. The mass of the house has been reduced another 1,548 cubic feet. If you turn to the next page after that, you'll see kind of a drawing that shows the amount of mass that has been reduced since the beginning of this project. To reduce the mass, what I've done is I've changed the roof pitches on all of the secondary ridges to 10 pitches. They now match the main ridge as a 10 pitch. So that reduced the height on the larger ones 2.5 feet, and on the smaller one 1.5 feet. So the mass has been reduced. Now, those were put in last Friday, a week ago Friday, and this past Friday I went in and nobody had gone in to look at them. So I just wanted to let you know that I sent out an email to the neighbors that have been showing up and letting them know that the things had been changed and how much the mass had been reduced. So I just wanted to let you know that I reached out and let them know since nobody had come in to look at the file.
So overall, you reduce the, you say the cubic square footage to just shy of 1,550.
That was just the latest reduction. So the total reduction in cubic footage since we started this is 5,694 cubic feet of reduction in mass. And that's kind of shown, that blackened area on sheet 5A shows how the whole house has been reduced. One of the first things I did was I reduced the ceiling height on the first floor. That was one of the things that I did 7 meetings ago. So, and that had been a suggestion actually by the neighbors. They were asking for a reduction in height and a reduction in mass, and one of the suggestions by Ms. Pine was, could we reduce the ceiling height on the first floor? That was something that we did. So then the change of the plate height, the reduction in the roof pitches have all brought that mass down and the height down.
Well, thank you for volunteering to do so. I'm sure that there's public comment, and then we'll see what the board has to say.
Yes, sir.
Public comment on the application.
New public comment.
I'm sure they have relevant information about plans, but we would hope that those that will be speaking understand it would have to be new information that has not already been spoken of before, like such as the new set of plans that we currently have.
Precisely. So what I've done is prepared a chart to show what the cubic foot reduction is on a mathematical basis, which I'm going to hand out.
Okay.
And it's just specifically to deal with the new plans.
Very good.
So it should be 4 here. It might be easier to look at this. I have a copy for each of you. Just take about two minutes to go over this, because there are a lot of numbers. So what I've done is, compared to the previous submission when the board was indicating there was too much mass, and compared it to this submission, we looked at total rooms, coverage, GFA, square footage, and main ridge height, for which there were no changes. So no changes in room count, no changes in coverage, no changes in GFA, no changes in square footage, no changes in the main ridge height. There were changes in the secondary heights, but not in the total height. The only change was in cubic feet. The cubic feet this reduction is 2%. It went from approximately 69,008, that's the far column to the right, down to 67,460 feet. That is the entire change. 1548 measured, and there's the reduction, 2%. And to give you an illustration, when I compared it to my home at 473, if you go to the far bottom right column, you'll see that this home, 67,460, my home is 31,338. It's 2.15 times the size of my house in Mass, using cubic feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Evening, Barbara Miss at 471 Hill. I'd first of all like to thank Zach for his nice report I read today, backing up the history of the property, the one property in the historic district. So appreciate that. As an aside, I sent an email, a fax to the board this afternoon, and I will read it to you. I've submitted it there, and I want to submit it here. It's to the board, obviously. And I say, I understand that only 3 members of the board of the Historic Preservation and Architectural Review may be present at tonight's meeting. Due to the controversial nature of the above Gary application, I hereby request that no final action or vote be taken until full board can be present. So I'd like to submit that. I think that would be fair with what's going on. Nothing against you guys, but I'd like to see 5 here. And I've seen a precedence for this with quite a few times. Secondly, I wrote, I have to,
Are you saying we're being sneaky?
No, I'm just saying I'd like to see, I'm not sure who's a sympathetic or not sympathetic.
Okay. Just taking.
I know. I appreciate it.
I'm feeling joking today. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Believe it or not, I do have a sense of humor. Maybe not up here. Now for good reason, right? In any event, what I wanted to say, I appreciate Lisa's efforts. Now, what stymied, I was not here last week to get over to look at all these papers, but anyway, I did get, and I've watched all the board meetings on video, thank you very much. I have never heard the expression cubic feet used. I've heard square feet, but cubic feet, out of the blue, we are talking cubic feet. And I'm sorry, didn't have a chance to call my friendly architect friend to figure out what the difference is, and I guess Mr. Pressman has explained it. But basically, it's a very minimal change. Some of that is also attributable to the fact that the lowering of the roof law passed. So some of that had occurred just afterwards. So this is like a 2% difference, and really doesn't affect, in my opinion, the mass. Therefore, I'm going to submit this letter, which I also did put into the board today, saying, Dear Chairman Highsmith and members of the board, while architect Lisa Zaloga has reduced the number of cubic feet by 1548 in her latest submitted plan for the above proposed Gary House and minimally lowered the secondary ridges by she said 2.4 inches, but we know it's 2.4 feet, right? And 1.4 feet. She has not reduced the overall mass of the house in square feet, as I understood the board to request of her for the above proposed Gary House in its August 24, 2015 public meeting. Therefore, I must continue to ask the board to veto this application on the basis of its mass and out-of-scale height as being detrimental, inconsistent, unharmonious, and out of character with the original existing extant 1.5-story 19th century residence is still existing on this originally one-lot property, cul-de-sac, off Hill Street in this historic district neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there you go again, another one. Do you want more of these or just one? One will do. You already have one more. There you go. Thank you, sweetie. And that's my plate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Okay. Zach, you did a report on the structures on the lot.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Wait, we have correct.
Do you want to wait for Zach's report, or do you have something further to say?
I can wait till afterwards.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Zach?
Well, I think the directive for me, coming from the last meeting, was to determine whether or not there was some jurisdiction with regard to this earlier historic compound, which was thoroughly researched and presented, which was basically new information as far as I was concerned, because I didn't know about the earlier history of the complex of buildings. And so that's really the kind of the objective of my report, was to kind of explore that as an issue, and either to suggest that we need to pursue that, or that that's not relevant. So without reading through this, the point is that when the inventory was done of village properties in 1979, which then led to a determination of boundary lines encompassing historic buildings and a decision as to what was contributing and not, et cetera, this property had already been subdivided into 4 separate lots. The main house, which is not well described in the inventory, but of course these are young college students who are doing what we call windshield surveys. That's when you don't get out of the car. So you do the best you can. So these are exterior assessments. Much is made of Amar Embry's intervention, which is wonderful because he's such a great architect and contributed so much locally. Truthfully, what he did was he built a wing off the back of a Greek Revival farmhouse, which is fine. It's quite lovely. And he certainly put his stamp on that house, named Wayside. That was the property that was listed as a historic property and later designated as a contributing component in the district. There is room on that inventory form to make reference to significant accessory buildings and landscape features and other things contributing. There is no reference made to any of these secondary accessory structures, which historically related to the main house, but in terms of the inventory that was conducted, there was no reference made to them. And the boundary line was so drawn. In other words, if these other buildings had been recognized as of historical interest, they may well have qualified as additional. So the boundary line is drawn, and furthermore, if we look back to the maps that the town, the Sanborn tax map, dated October 1926, which the building department uses as a reference point to determine whether buildings that are outside of the historic district have some historical interest that might warrant their being looked at more closely. We find that the building which was labeled as a garage was subsequently relocated. So it appears that the building in question on 475 Hill Street was positioned elsewhere on the property. And when that property was subdivided, it appears as if that 4th building was moved to the present lot. Certainly after 1926, because in 1926 it wasn't there. There's a little tiny thing that might have been an outhouse. Not quite sure. Little shed. So we're in that sort of technical area whereby, in terms of the code requiring that buildings that predate 1926 ought to be looked at if they're not in the district, if they have some historical interest. This building does not appear on the map, and is therefore not the subject of inquiry. So that's basically that. I would say that there is also the question of the so-called fourth building, which is 473, and that's a new house. 473 is a new house. Okay. So, as far as I can determine. So, of the 4 buildings that are being discussed as the prior compound, one's new, so it's not contributing. And it presumably replaced one of those older Embury inspired or designed buildings, which was taken down and replaced with a new house.
Actually fell down.
All by its own.
I watched it fall by
During
itself.
Sandy.
I did too.
During Sandy.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
No, it fell with
Well,
a wrecking ball. I blew on it and it fell down.
I was gonna bring up the huff and the puff thing.
Yeah.
So in any event, I don't feel that we have, aside from the main house, so-called Wayside, the only other surviving structure, which is architecturally very interesting and is associated with Mr. Embury's work, is Ms. Missett's house, which is identified as the studio. And it has very clear architectural elements that relate it to the additions that Embury put on the main house. So that still retains its historical significance. But the other building is now gone, and the one in question, while it may likely have been a part of that original compound, has been moved to another property, and therefore, that's a problem. That's a historical integrity issue. It's been moved, and it is not identified in that survey as having any interest. So my conclusion is that I don't feel that we have jurisdiction to look at that surviving Embury house as being of sufficient interest to stand in the way of a proposal for a new dwelling. If the board or neighbors, et cetera, feel otherwise, then what we're left with is looking at that former garage converted into a dwelling, which was once an accessory structure on that property, whether or not it itself has sufficient architectural importance to warrant an individual landmarking. Not inclusion in the district, because it's not in the district. We have had precedent where an individual building appears to have enough architectural interest to warrant, a hearing and an application as such. But it would have to have that. And my honest feeling is that an accessory building rarely rises to that level of architectural significance. So I don't really see that as practical or as probable. So that's. I should have just read the report, it would have been shorter.
Any other public comment?
Ann Pine, Hill Street, close to this. I just wanted to respond to what Zach said. I agree with him. It was moved a little bit. But I don't think that's really the issue here. I don't think any of us feel that that building should be preserved and somebody should be forced to live in it. I think it's that we wanted something in the character.
That was to answer a question that came up in conversation that why this lot was not identified as a property of interest to have a report done by Zach due to his age.
Okay.
So
well, let me say something else. We have two properties behind our contributing front house, and they are in the historic district, and they would qualify, I think, for historic interest and to be preserved. So when that survey was done, I think it only took into account the front houses. I don't think there's any example of a back house. I think that was just the way they did it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but just to be clear, you're referring to some secondary buildings that are still on your piece of property?
Correct.
Okay. Well, the difference here is that if your property had been subdivided such that those other buildings were left on their own parcels.
It was subdivided.
No, I asked you, your house has 2 accessory structures.
Yes, but it was subdivided, and we bought back those lots.
I'm not really sure how many properties. When a property is considered contributing, it's not the building, it's the section, block, and lot. It's the tax ID parcel number, which is listed. It could have a principal dwelling, it could have a barn, it could have 7 accessory structures. Whether they're enumerated as being of interest or not is immaterial, because it's the property that's designated as a contributing resource.
And
in this case, we have 4 separate properties.
at the time of 1979?
And Wayside being the obvious main house.
Okay,
et cetera.
thank you.
But an effort would have to have been made then to observe that, oh, well, there are 3 buildings that are of architectural interest, and it was Amar Ember, and to enumerate those other 3 tax parcel numbers as being part of it. That wasn't done, it was overlooked perhaps, but they are secondary buildings, and the main thrust of these projects is to identify the main house.
Okay, well, I feel that Mrs. Missett's studio is of historic interest, and I feel our 3 are of historic interest. But I don't feel that it's necessary to live in something that's falling down and that could be much better. But I feel that the spirit of that area and of our area should be maintained by the Historic Preservation Board, because we all bought properties understanding what they were and what the limitations were. So while our taxes go up with 9-bedroom houses, 2 Farrell houses, we can't actually have any confidence that our property value's gone up, because we may be stuck with barns and studios. So we are, in fact, damaged. We bought this understanding, all of us, that we would have security in the neighborhood.
You do have to understand that this board's, and I'm sorry to say this board's responsibility is not your financial
Right, I know that, but I also know in
It's-
Article 78 you have to prove damage.
Okay.
I think we are all damaged by the character of these large houses, and character is certainly, it's equal to your architectural review. It's I think above things like mass. Character, and this is very out of character. When you have, I know we don't care about the inside, but when you have a character that is going to be very different, that character shows in the exterior, in the architecture, and this shows.
I understand that I understand you
All
put
right.
layers of information for whatever action you want to go forward and do, but you're still speaking of issues that are not within the jurisdiction of this board.
Well, character is
Well,
within.
character for the community as it relates to the exterior aesthetics.
Yes, and I think the character here is very different regardless of any changes. Now, I also would like to address the changes that were made. We have not been able to, I made those model houses, and they were based on 1/8 inch to 1 foot drawings that were in the building department. But at a certain point of time, Ms. Zaloga stopped allowing those to be available, except through taking a picture of them. I asked her, excuse me, I'm getting to something.
Okay.
We're unable to accurately show the mass of the new house compared to the mass of the old house because we don't have the tools. They have been denied to us by not receiving, by her signing them. We can't get a copy. We can only photograph it, which distorts the scale. I tried today and I also asked Ms. Zaloga, she talks about cubic feet. This was newly brought up today. We never heard this before. So suddenly we're scrambling, even if we looked on September 4th, scrambling to find out what is the cubic feet of the whole house. Mr. Pressman seems to have found out. What's the cubic feet of all the other houses? This is a whole new thing. So this reduction by 1,500 cubic feet is amorphous. I think it's very little. I think it's 2%. We aren't asking for a 2% reduction. We're asking for a house that is not in striking juxtaposition to the other houses in the area. Now, to jump out of the historic district, the houses behind it on either side of it are certainly not in the historic district, and they are 1/2 to 1/3 the mass. So we're back to the same thing. Now, I traced. This is the reduction. I mean, this is like taking the wrinkles out of my face. This is the reduction. I mean, seriously, we got to get real here. there's some passage in the Bible about the Pharisees, wherever they were, because I'm not religious, I don't know, straining a gnat and swallowing a camel. I mean, this is, what we're talking about. And you all haven't made up your mind that I know, but before you make up your mind, we don't come here every night to talk about little changes. It's a heck of an effort. A lot of stuff gets thrown out of your lives and our lives to keep reappearing here, and we're not doing it for game playing and little reductions, and you aren't either. So I'm just saying, given what we saw tonight, it's game. It's this, I mean, this is not changing the fact that this is setting new precedents in this neighborhood and changing the nature of the neighborhood combined with the other 3 or 4 large houses. This is a well-established neighborhood before these houses. So if you approve this, you're making another step toward actively changing the nature of a neighborhood. And I truly believe your mission is historic preservation, which is conservative by nature. We shouldn't have to be up here saying, oh, wait a minute, there's a house. You should be telling us, wait a minute, this is what it is.
Not our responsibility to tell you that. No, I get what you're saying, and
Okay, well, let me go on then.
You're defining our
I think a
responsibility
historic
roles.
preservation board ought to be interested in historic preservation, not have it thrown at them by other people. But I'll leave that aside. I'm mostly concerned with the neighborhood, not the historic neighborhood. And I think in outside the historic neighborhood, in, 116 as opposed to 65 of your code, it's to enhance, to maintain, to preserve. It's not to change. And this really, and you may agree with me, so forgive me if I'm lecturing you, this is another effort on the part of who's coming in here to change a well-established and thriving neighborhood. All the people I visited love their houses. They're planting, they have pools, they're happy, their children are there, they have house guests. This is a neighborhood of 2 and 3 bedroom houses where people have been very happy. And if they have to upgrade the house, they'll upgrade the house. If someone else buys it and they make it a little bigger, fine. We're talking about 100% more cubic feet, I think we will find out, not a 3% reduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please step forward.
I'm Patricia Pescott Callhop, 84 Harvest Lane. My southern boundary probably is the largest boundary abutting the subject property tonight. I did not get an email to tell you what was going on.
I didn't
Nor
get
did
one
we.
either.
Okay. We didn't.
Nor did we.
Didn't get an email.
Because I got it from Mr. Pressman.
And my
Excuse me, we were listening to.
Okay. My home is even smaller than Mr. Pressman's. It's probably a 2,000 at the most square foot ranch house. And that house behind me is definitely a mass that concerns me and the neighborhood.
Thank you. Anything further? All right. Brian, you weren't here at the last meeting, so you missed a lot of the delight. Were you able to look at the video?
Yes.
Okay. A lot has happened in the midst of that meeting. We originally thought we were hearing the questions with regards to, what is this?
Fine, she has to submit.
What is it?
I didn't ask.
Model houses?
I'm sorry, we don't know what this is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's just for the record. It's the model houses. I took pictures of them, so if it's necessary to look at them.
We don't have, I mean, can we accept it, or are we looking at, all right? No issues? Okay, no issues. So we had questions with regards to, I think some calculations the building department was trying to get us further information on, especially as it pertains to the front yard. There was other dialogue that came about the size and overall mass. At that time, the board didn't have the votes to discuss approval of the application. The applicant went back and representative, the applicant now has come back with designs which they say is a reduction from this original, has presented to us history of those reductions. Any comments, any questions, concerns that you have on this application? No? Christine, there were still some
I
issues.
have no more comments or questions.
Okay. Council, the application is not in historic district there, but because of threats of issue, the chances are that the application is going to require a written decision. Do you have any comment, questions, or anything that we should be concerned about?
No, I think we should have a written decision on this, and I'm not sure I can, given what's happened tonight, promise that it'll be available for the next meeting, but it might go over to the month, but we'll do a written decision.
Okay. We close the application and will not allow it for any further information
Close
to be.
the application for all purposes, subject to the decision only.
Motion to close the application, all purposes, subject to.
Cursor.
Subject to.
Subject to decision.
Decision. Is there a
Wait.
motion?
We have someone who wants to speak.
Okay.
It's not necessarily pertinent to this, although partly. Evelyn
If it has nothing to do with this application,
Well,
then
it
we're
has
not gonna-
something to do with something you said, referring to this application. You were talking about your jurisdiction as a board, and I would like you to tell us what you think your jurisdiction is.
I don't have time.
Because, I think you do
Miss-
have to,
Miss
because you're
Conlon,
making
I do
decisions
not,
based
and
on
there's
what
a
you
motion-
consider
there's a
your
motion on the board. Is there a
jurisdiction
motion?
is,
I
and
make
it's
a
wrong.
motion to close the hearing of the Gary property for a written decision by our council.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Without legal underpinnings of your decision.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
So does that mean that the three of you are voting tonight?
We are not voting
No.
tonight. The application has been closed for written decision by
Full
council.
board,
What is it? So you're full board?
We don't have a full board
Thank
here.
you. Okay, thank you.
Next application, please.
okay. Next application. Meadowmere Partners has been adjourned to October 26th, so the next application is Ricky L. Associates.
On the historic district. Proceed.
Good evening. Tony Mirolo, representing Ricky L. Associates. And in response to your comments in the last meeting, we proposed the house that's in front of you right now. We changed the front elevation, maintained the 31.6 feet height, below the 33-foot height currently under code.
Thank you.
And any other question, and plus your package is hopefully in order for you to review. So please provide any questions. I'll be glad to answer them.
So this is the latest rendering?
No, this was the previous. This is the latest.
Right, that's the
I'm just
previous.
showing you what they've changed from.
Mhm.
Brian, any comments?
Well, it's an improvement, but it's still not there.
Anything in direct?
I just think that center mass that you're proposing is just so top-heavy.
Okay.
You know, it's this big triangle on these little columns, and, you know, if you could just tone that down a bit, and, you know, it's basically just a simplified version of that. And to me, it's still just way too top-heavy, and there's no real sense of entry in terms of your front door being just sitting under this big mass. That's my feeling.
Christine?
I agree. I think that it's top-heavy. I think the entrance to the house is overpowered by your eaves and your pointed. I think that you could bring it down a bit and improve it. I do.
So that's
Just soften it, soften the entrance somehow.
Okay, so the entrance is the only issue, and then if we soften it, we'd be, any other
No,
comments?
I don't think you listened, there was more.
Okay.
There was more. Said that overall, just the three, I guess they were gables, that we reduce, soften more, because they look like three dunce caps sitting in the front of the house. I mean, that's the only representation I can
Okay.
give. Do you have any questions?
No,
Any
I
public
can-
comment on the application? All right, so you're going to come back with a...
We'll do that, change.
Soften
and-
up the,
and then we can
as well
talk.
as giving more defined
Any other comments I need to
Those
address?
were it.
Those are, okay. Thank you so much.
The
Tone it
porte
down and
cochere is,
make this bigger.
I'm sorry?
that's
Porte cochere?
that's what I would call it, that kind of roofed, oh, is that a patio? I thought you
Yeah.
drove through that, I'm sorry.
No, you could.
All right,
but-
the patio.
Do you want this in the?
Yeah, you can see that.
Is that a deck?
Put it in the file.
Is that like a knee wall with a deck on top of that?
No, there's no deck on top.
Okay. Well, then I'm just wondering what purpose, you see what I'm saying? This, I'm just wondering, it looks from the ground as if that roof sort of sweeps up for about 3 feet because you could come out and sort of enjoy the view. So I just thought maybe that was
Is that a second story deck?
deck above.
No, that's not. That's a carport?
A carport.
Correct.
That's what I meant by porte cochere. So why does it have a roof that looks like that? I'm just, it doesn't,
Matches the sweeping roof on top. There's no deck on top, so there's no opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just sort of, from the ground, it looks
Can't
as
get
if you
far.
could exit that, what must be a window, because that could be a door and you'd be out there. That to me would justify the roof form sort of going up and just being like a little part of the roof, because it rises up 3 feet or so.
Sneaking it back in.
I think as for that, you can just see the roof. You see a roof, like a very shallow hipped roof,
Okay.
without any, well, just my feelings.
I know it's a window now, but you know, what happens after the house is built. Yeah, is there a reason why the deck is formed in that fashion? And I see it, there's a window there now, placed now, but I'll tell you, and I'm not accusing you of anything at all, but we've noticed in other applications where accidentally windows are converted into doors and second story decks are created.
Okay, so we'll address that issue and
Thank you.
try to make.
Any
it better.
public comment? Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn the application of Ricky Associates Incorporated at 230 Bishop's Lane.
Second.
All in favor? Next application, please.
Next application, Robert Barron, driveway gates. This has been on for a while.
That's Chris.
Okay, motion to, well, we've already sent out a letter, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, we said we would, actually, didn't say it, just said there's no one here, this is the third time a letter been through, will be signed, that was all we said last time.
And did we send a letter? We did not?
I told the building department too.
And so we don't know if one letter went out. All right, let's get reference that the letter went out, just make sure that it did. If it, applicant's not present at our next meeting, it will be withdrawn without prejudice.
Shall I adjourn it?
Yes.
I make a motion that we adjourn the application on Wickapog Road of Robert Barron for the driveway gates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Drew Schuttinger, 166 Corrigan Street.
Good evening. I'm Jeremy Hubble. I live at 21 Turtle Pond Road in Southampton, and I'm the owner of the lot at 166 Corrigan Street. And I'm here to speak about the approvals for the house that we are proposed to build. First, let me say that I appreciate your task and what you're doing, because managing growth and change is never easy, and you're faced with this somewhat tricky predicament of trying to manage mass versus size. And in reviewing proposals, you have to take into account all the specific characteristics of each house and its lot, topography, style, massing, landscaping, etc. These are all the ingredients that go into determining whether a house fits into the neighborhood, whether it's a welcome addition to the neighborhood. And so understanding the neighborhood and that context is really critical, which I'd like to speak about a little bit. First, have you all walked Corrigan Street and 166? Are you familiar with this particular lot and the area?
Mhm.
Great.
I live there.
Okay, great.
So
Well,
yes.
as you understand the street, and hopefully you know it very well, I think you'll agree that the house that we are now proposing is very responsive to the comments and concerns that you've expressed, and not only fits into the neighborhood, but it's a welcome addition to the neighborhood and reflects a positive direction that the street is headed. So let me speak to the neighborhood. Corrigan Street, in my opinion, will be one of Southampton's prettier streets. It's really got a lovely sort of subtle curve to it, nice tree cover. It also benefits from not being a cut-through street, so it has limited traffic. The history of this street and development of the street is a little bit unusual to the rest of the village in that it developed somewhat late with not much development going on further as you get back from Hill Street, and most of that development taking place in the 70s. And there are still some vacant lots there, which is pretty unusual in Southampton. So in a village that is predominantly two-story and three-story houses, Corrigan is still about a 50-50 ratio between a two-story and one-story home. And the single-story homes that are there are really neither historically significant nor architecturally significant. In a village that is, I think Southampton is something like 98% built out, it's really inevitable that smaller houses will be dramatically expanded or replaced with up-to-date family homes that meet the current demand. And this is happening in Corrigan Street and the neighborhood. This process has begun.
You know, if you had this conversation a couple of applications before now, you probably would have been hit or tackled from behind.
Because?
That was the whole argument about.
Oh,
yes.
I understand, yes. I mean, this is in particular a neighborhood in transition, if that's...
It's annexed to Hill Street. It's all relevant.
It's all, and that's true in North Captain's Neck and McGee Street, Bernadine. I mean, this is happening in a wide area, and particularly in the sort of western section of Southampton, there's a lot going on. So the question is, for Corrigan Street and for these areas, you know, what is it transitioning to? Zoning helps dictate, restricts the size, and frankly, I applaud the new height limitations that have lowered the heights of the ridge lines and some of the new parking restrictions. I think that will help manage that. But you're left with this issue of mass and making sure that houses fit into the neighborhood. And this is exactly the discussion that we've had at length. Luckily for Corrigan Street, this street, all of these lots enjoy 100 feet or more of frontage on the street. So one of the problems that Corrigan Street will not encounter is in some of the streets and some that are nearby, where the lot widths are much smaller, you get houses that are closer together and present a little bit more of a wall-like and alley-like, because many of them are front-to-back houses. You get sort of a different rhythm. These houses on Corrigan Street will be able to breathe, and so that's an advantage as this street progresses. So what do the neighbors want, and what do they envision for the street? I think they understand that over time, this will be a predominantly two-story environment. So what they want well-designed, quality houses that are respectful to the street and to the village. Typically, this means traditional style, classic design, cedar shingle roofs and sidings, and this is what has already started to occur on Corrigan Street. 114 was recently built. That is a house we developed and sold in May. 115 across the street from that. 154 now under construction, which will be completed in October. And 166 are headed in this direction. So even though change can be disruptive and somewhat inconvenient for the immediate neighbors, our neighbors at 166 have been very supportive of the new development. They're complimentary of what has recently been built, and they're supportive of our plans for this project. We first appeared here 2 meetings ago in July, and with the exception of a homeowner on Harvest Lane that is actually behind us, no one spoke against our proposed house.
Have any changes been done to the application from?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so we
I'm
can get to
getting
the
there.
changes.
I'm speaking to that. I'll get
Okay.
there quickly. Our Corrigan Street neighbors are supportive of what we're doing. Our first house, 114, which
Can
was
we
really the
talk about the
pioneer.
changes of this? I'm sorry, it's a long evening this evening, and I appreciate the texture
Well,
of the community.
I simply want to make the point that the neighbors really appreciate the changes
Do you
as
have
they are
written,
being
written
made.
comments from the neighbors there?
I do have comments from the neighbors, and in fact, I have 4 letters from neighbors in support of our house.
Okay, do you have those for the record?
I do, yep. Would you like me to read those or just leave them? Okay. One of those letters is from John Foster, who happens to be the building inspector, who has watched us build our other homes with a very close and critical eye. And he is supportive of what we've done and particularly appreciative of the changes we have made since we first came here in July.
Can we talk about those changes?
Can you walk us
Yes.
through the changes?
Please.
But I just want to make it clear.
No, can we just get to the coming in?
Okay.
We love the dissertation, but can we just really get to the
What we've done most
elevation?
recently, we've lowered the height. The original ridge line, or what we are allowed is 30 feet. We first came in at 28 feet. We are now coming in at 26 feet, and I think it's 10 inches. So that has been a fairly good reduction in height. And I know massing is an understandable concern. That's what the board expressed to us our last time here, so we've tried to address that. We've also lowered, well, the original design was a gambrel design because we wanted to be distinctive from what we built at 154 and 114. But the general sense was that that too was presented too massive a look, as gambrels can sometimes look a little boxy and a little barn-like. So we changed that design to a double gable look. I can show it to you here in rendering. And this shows the lower roof line, currently lowered roof line. In addition, we've twice reduced the overall size of the house, lopping off not only square footage, but most importantly, reducing that front elevation, the left to right distance of the house. We reduced that by 7 feet.
What's been reduced from the previous meeting?
The ridge line.
The ridge
The
line.
ridge line, now
From
26
what to
feet,
what?
10 inches, I think is the current height from 20, down from about 20, almost 28 feet.
So 2 feet difference.
Yes, yes. We also,
You went from, I'm sorry, you went
28
from?
to 2610.
1 foot, 2 inches.
About a foot, a little more.
yeah, something like that.
You went from what to what?
From 28 to 2610.
I'm Jeff Zahn, I'm the
Sorry.
architect. It's down 1 foot from the previous meeting.
Right.
Overall, from our original meeting, 2 feet.
2 feet.
Thank you.
Can I see something?
That's coupled with shrinking the house left and right by 7 feet, so our setbacks are now 17 and 31 feet. And that was true at our last meeting as well. So my point is that the original profile, the profile of this house has been lowered and has been narrowed, and I think that really addresses the issue of mass. It also benefits, from a massing standpoint, from the lot itself, because topographically, 166 is at the low point of the street. And the ground level here stays the same at road level as it goes back into the lot. It's almost 3 feet lower, just topographically, than 154, which is right to its south, which actually rises in elevation. So the overall effect is that this house is going to appear significantly lower due to it's a lower ridge line and it sits down lower, and we're going to keep the house low to the ground. And lastly, if you've been by the property, I think you'll see that it benefits from very extensive landscaping which creates a very, really a four-season green screening on all four sides, but particularly across the front. This includes some arborvitaes that are 18 to 20 feet tall. And we redesigned our driveway so that there's a small curb cut. You don't really see a lot of this house from the street. So although it's handsome and I think it fits in with the architecture and where this street is going, it's almost too bad that it will barely be seen from the street. In addition, you asked for a streetscape, and we've prepared when we've done our best to prepare when it's tricky to get the scale right, but I do have a streetscape that shows all the way from Hill Street to Moses Lane on both sides of the street. So we prepared this. I doubt you want to, do you want to view it now, or should I leave this with you?
You don't have that in a,
I can
Maybe
submit
instead
that
of
to you subsequently.
be part of the record so that we have it.
But do you want it in, it gets very small, it's a problem. I mean, this is 3 boards across.
We don't need all that.
Yeah.
We really, contextually, we look at the 5 homes both ways.
Okay. Would you like to see that in a reduced form? And
Right.
Okay. Do you want me to leave you with this or not?
No.
Okay.
We don't want to be responsible for the board.
Okay.
Fortunately, we're transporting it up and downstairs, and for some reason, things disappear.
Understood. Understood. Okay. We will do
Houses
that.
either side and this center.
At any rate, you know, I think the point here is that we're trying to build a house that's very responsive to everything we've heard from the ARB. We're trying to build a house that fits into the fabric of the neighborhood. Our neighbors really appreciate this, and we hope that you agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or?
Any public comment on the application? Brian, any comments?
I just want to clarify something. The shed dormers that you're showing on the drawings, they're tucked back from the front ridge, but in your rendering, you're showing them aligned with the front ridge, so it looks a little funny. I'm assuming your drawings are what's correct. This is just, okay.
You mean that the shed dormer coming all the way to the front?
Yes,
As
because
opposed
it
to
doesn't
being-
read as a dormer if it does.
Is it set back one?
Set back so it would read
1 or
more
2
like
feet,
it.
something like
Right.
that.
The only other issue I have is the front entrance. That swooping porch to me is a very postmodern look for this house. And with the eyebrow on top of it, you're sort of getting this double curve thing. And I just think if that front porch was broken down the scale of it, it would be, I have no issue with the mass of the house.
Would you prefer the front porch to be, in essence, horizontal, and instead of an eyebrow to be a shed dormer?
No, I mean, I think an eyebrow is appropriate for this house. I just think that both of them is a little bit too much.
As opposed to being reflective?
One or the other,
it's-
you know, and I just think that front porch is just too massive in its swoop across.
So if we square that, maintain the eyebrow, then the architecture is appealing.
Yeah.
Christine?
I mean, you could do a smaller gable on the front or something, you know.
I agree with Brian, and I would like to see this set with the houses either side of it, just to see how it does fit into the streetscape.
In a two-dimensional, but sort of a 3D rendering, but, okay.
That actually was what we originally requested.
That's
When we
what
say
we really-
streetscape, it's,
Doesn't have
we're not
to
just
be the whole street.
asking you to ride down the road and take photos.
Okay.
It's to be able to identify what your parcel is gonna, or your home looks like once erected in comparison to the neighboring properties, just to get an idea contextually of what the
Yeah, just
impact of your structure
set
will
it
be.
in, either side of the 2 houses either side, 2 or 4 houses either side, so we can see how it fits into the neighborhood.
Okay, fine, we will do that. Any
Anything-
other guidance, or?
Anything further from the public? Either way we look at it, I'm sorry, I disagree with you about the neighborhood and the content of the neighborhood and changing. I think it, but unfortunately, we're at a point now where unless we do something more restrictive with regards to the current code, I hate to say, but it is what it is. It's unfortunate because it is in fact changing the content of the community. And and it's, I don't think in a positive manner. I just personally don't. Too much house, sitting too close to the road. That's just my own personal belief.
Go in the file.
Anything further? Nothing further from the board? Okay.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn the application of Drew Schuttinger on Corrigan Street to our next meeting.
Now, you make a application to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn.
The applicant's request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
Second.
Drew
All-
Schuttinger at Corrigan Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application, please.
Gregory Zabel, 52 Little Plains. He has two options here.
Sorry?
There are two
Yeah,
options
I
here.
heard about that.
Distribute. I'm the architect for Mr. Zabel. My name is Val Florio. And from the last meeting, I've come back with the new iteration of the design. I also came back with a secondary option. The drawings are dated 9/14, which are the revised drawings. I bought them in this afternoon.
Are you proposing A or B?
Yes.
Focus on A.
What I'd like to do, which.
Just focus on A.
Right.
Okay.
Option A
We're
is
getting a lot of
version-
these multiple choice applications, and it's,
I did come in initially with option B, but the homeowner asked me, could I please try to get them option A approved?
okay.
And I think, that being said, if I can get to the historian as well. These are the same drawings. Oh, yeah. Thank you. This is option A.
No, this is all A. B looks completely different. And you're
So
happy with
Let's
it.
focus on A.
Option A version, what it is, I explained at the last meeting, it's a four-square design, which we felt looks more cottage-like for this street. The existing house is rather small in scale. We'd like to mimic the footprint. There was a comment at the last meeting as well about massing of the house as it relates to the northern neighbor. And what we had done was take the second floor of this building, reshifted it to the middle of the property. You could see that on page 2, which is an aerial view. And that clearly shows that the center mass of this home is no longer congregated to the north property line. I think that was a concern of Jeff. I don't recall his last name, but
Totally, yeah.
so what I'd like to say, these are the reductions or the revisions. The roof is 2 feet lower. As I said, the shifting of the mass is to the center of the property. Landscape plan is a good illustration of that.
Oh, let's go to option 2.
Okay. Option 2, as you said, Mr. Highsmith, hip roof house would be very symmetrical. I think the difference,
No.
the difference between these two designs is that the right side of the house has moved forward, so it's in the same plane in the face of the building as the most prominent street front portion of the four-square. So it turns into a very symmetrical hip roof design.
It's, much more elongated. It's much more mass on the street. This is set
So
back.
option B
So
is
this what
is
you're doing.
dated September the 9th.
You don't read it as well. This is,
Yeah,
this
you
is all
can't read it,
set.
yeah, you can't read it.
That's what you're gonna read. And he lowered this roof line to make that pop out. This is gonna be much too massive on the street.
We happen to like option A because it read more as a typical four-square house.
Looks like a four-square that was added onto.
Exactly. And I gave you a photographic example. There's a house in the neighborhood. I think that what happened at the last meeting is the computer rendering had merged the roof of the four-square. I have that drawing here.
You're exactly right.
I think it's a bad example because it reads as a lopsided, that's the first thing you said at the meeting, Mr. Highsmith, that it looked like a lopsided hip roof house.
Yes.
And we don't want that. We deliberately want the four square to be more prominent and give it a more cottage-like look to the project, so. You have the architecturals, which I think read even better on line drawing, black and white. Ironically, makes this project look or read correctly. Architecturally, it looks better.
That's a little bit.
That's better. Shading.
Yeah,
So
that's what it's gonna look like.
yeah, and that's common throughout the village. I don't, as much as you like the symmetry, I think the mass
No,
is
that
too.
looks, well, what he just did makes it
Yeah.
look better. Well, I think one of the things we also asked for was a three-dimensional drawing that gives it better, in terms of contextual dimension. And that's what was, we were failing to read on the plans as they were
Yes.
submitted,
Yeah.
and even tonight. But when you give a little shade, better.
Mhm.
Did you see what he did? This
I know
future
what you did.
applications that you
That's
do.
exactly what
I mean,
we'd
it
like
just-
to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just makes it a
Yeah.
little better for us. Remember, we're looking at things from a one-dimensional standpoint.
Well, I think
with layman
also-
eyes, so we're trying to figure out what the.
So much better.
The massing of this house from the previous version, which I bought as well too, we reduced the dormer, so.
Yeah,
little-
reducing the dormer and lowering that roof.
It's
in
more
the
of an
back.
ornament, it's not something, as a living space type of window on the roof. So I think the scale is really in keeping with the neighborhood. I gave you those flyby views of the street,
These are all no.
which,
I have a pile here.
Thank you. All right, any public comment on the application?
This is all option 2.
Anything further from the board?
No.
No.
Second story deck, any
I think
issues,
it's nice, though.
challenges? Second story deck, any issues?
No.
No? Okay. Motion to approve.
I make a motion, we approve the application of Gregory Zabel at 52 Little Plains Road.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
the date for which version you're approving, the Foursquare, correct, which is dated?
9/14/2015, option A.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm gonna give you option B.
No, it's part of the file now. It's been accepted as part of the file.
Yes. No.
So much paper in the way.
You have to keep it.
Thank you.
Thanks, have a good luck. Next application, please.
Gail Belva, 74 Post Lane.
Hi,
We got that.
I'm Mike Chiaffi. I'm the builder and representative for Gail Belver at 74 Post Lane. And we're proposing for a 2.5 family home, detached garage, and detached pool house.
I'm sorry,
Single family home.
how do you have a 2.5 family
No,
home?
he means single family.
I meant 2.5 story.
Okay.
We're like.
I'm a little nervous.
They're small
okay.
sets now.
So do you have small sets?
Excuse me? Small
sets.
No, I don't. I do have some renderings, though, in the application.
Understood, but, which will be part of the building department's checklist going forward, just in case you were to build another home. We ask that,
Small set.
smaller sets, it's easier for us to read.
Gotcha.
It's kind of difficult for us, as a full board, to look at
I
4
understand.
sets of plans.
Get there.
You do need to walk with you. Okay, first, your big, what would you, I don't know what it's called.
You obviously have a two-story entrance in the house?
Excuse me?
Do you have a two-story entrance in the house?
I know, one-story entrance.
Okay, then what's the big,
The window up above?
yeah,
That's just a clear window to see the staircase going up to the third floor, half story.
Overpronounced, very big,
Okay.
very bulky, doesn't fit in. Needs something less, I don't even know what, in terms of the aesthetic that he's using in the window panes, as far as, I don't know the style. I think we go more of a traditional style from window. I know you want to have a palladium or a larger
Sure.
bay window to have more light, more true light coming into the home, understandably. Just, this is just way too grand.
center mass of it. Typically, this would be 2 stories, and then your top section would be a smaller dormer
Gotcha.
on the top, and you've connected them
I see
and
what
made
you're
this tower-looking thing, which is
Stone.
just not very appropriate.
And also just the roof line between the two. Do you see that you basically have created a cylinder or spaceship in the center there? Maybe more defined roof line so that we can see a little more symmetry in terms of the front facade itself. Even the 2 side wings of the house, you have panelization on the bottom, which is different than the panelization on the eastern side. Stone that's being used for the chimney as well as the cap. I don't know if you've driven through the community or neighborhood and see some of the material and styles of homes that are being built. I know you don't want to replicate it, you want your own original design, but it still should be in the same flavor or just in keeping with the community overall. So you're introducing a lot of elements that are foreign in that community, if not also in the village of Southampton itself. And second story deck.
Well, it was originally a deck when we brought it into the building department. She had mentioned that we can't have doors, we removed them. We just kept the rail up there, so it just didn't look like a big flat roof.
Well, there are 2 on both sides, on both fronts.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, the other one is a small deck.
Okay, so you have
But
2
there is no doorway to go out there. It's just a window, it's just a, aesthetic type of a look for the back.
How high is the railing?
36.
So you have a 2-code railing for a window of the rear deck.
Well, we originally had it in there
Okay.
with it, with the doors, and then Diane had said, that's not allowed, so I removed the doors, but just kept the look.
Okay. I mentioned it before, and
I
I'll
heard.
mention it again. At times, windows accidentally turn into doorways. Doorways turn into an entertainment area for the back or rear. The issue is that it creates a privacy concern for the neighbors.
Gotcha.
It's a large, especially on your, is that east or west? On your west side of your parcel, it's very pronounced, very large, so it leaves room for more entertainment, which is, of course, presents issues for those that are in the neighboring property. Your responsibility is, you're building, you're constructing, you're responsible for any privacy concerns that you introduce to the parcel. So we would probably ask that you eliminate the
Rails.
railing. The stone,
Eliminate the stone?
what type of stone are you using? Do you have a sample of the stone?
No, I don't, but we were gonna probably use some kind of a cultured stone, large grout line to give it old kind of world look.
And you're also introducing that to the rear. It looks like just a stone wall. So that's supposed to be
It
an
is,
outside.
there's a fireplace in there. Instead of just making it look like a bumped out shed, we decided to put the same stone on it.
Brian, you have comments?
Too many.
It's a blank slate, so you really have the ability
Redesign.
to design something, something interesting, but at the same time take in consideration that we are looking to have some harmony within the community. I know you've heard certain aspects of what people in the community think are harmony, mass, scale, design, the material that are being used. That's including cedar shingle and stone. It's the stone, something that's comparable to other designs that are happening here. Typically, homes with chimneys are brick. Stone is not something that is usually used here in Southampton Village. It has been introduced, but very rarely. So we would need if you really are proposing stone, we would need to see the stone.
Gotcha.
And see what type of stone that's being used. There's a lot of work to be done here. I really suggest that you go back to the drawing board because there's too much really to list all the concerns.
Okay.
There are design guidelines in the building department. It's a book that you could look through because new homes, we try, especially on a street like Post Lane, you try to sort of mimic some of the historic character of the homes that are there. And this house is just a very modern looking house that could be in
I think
Ohio.
you need to look for less interesting.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
Less interesting and more traditional, simpler.
Okay.
Any public comment on the application? Anything further from the board? So you go back and come back with, my suggestion is that any design that you do so at least a minimum of a week before the next meeting. That way it gives us the opportunity to review it, so we come in prepared.
Gotcha.
Okay? I see a hand standing up. Could you step forward, please? Step forward. If you can give way so she can speak.
Hi, I'm Gail Belva, and I own my house.
You speak into the microphone.
I'm Gail Belva, and I own my house over 20 years, so I'm not new to the community. And there is a house that just was completed at the end of Post Lane that is contemporary, 110% ultra contemporary. So when you talk about preserving the neighborhood, I'd like to know how it was approved that they could build a house that's an ultra contemporary home right on Post Lane.
Do you have a question about this application?
Well, you're saying that this application isn't in keeping with the street.
Correct. So we're
But
asking.
we have a contemporary home that is totally not in.
I understand what you're saying,
So
but
I'm
I
asking-
don't know the specifics of that application, and it's not before this board this evening. This evening, this application is before the board, so we'll be taking testimony on this application. Do you have issues, concerns, questions, comments about the application being presented
If you
today?
would like to provide us with something any more specific, I know you don't like the design at all, which is fine. Like I said, I lived there for 25 years, so I'm not new to the community. I owned the house when John Foster was my neighbor, so I don't want to do anything that's not in keeping with the community. But if you have something that's more specific that could help us provide a rendering that would be more in keeping.
Well,
we'd
just to let
appreciate
you
it.
know, our responsibility is not to design your home. And that's what ends up happening is when we start giving a bunch of detail about your application, we start designing your home, and that's really not our responsibility. And it's not and something we really don't want to start doing as a board overall. That's the reason why we turn to your architect, who's paid to do so. He's paid, he's been entitled, he's been empowered to do your rendering for you. And we've said, please, we've given a reference to go and look at the building department that gives design details. We also said go around the community and get an idea of the content of the community.
Mr. Chiappi's been at the building department at least 6, 7 times.
Okay.
And never once was he told that this was not in keeping with the neighborhood.
The building department, that's why you're here. We're the aesthetic.
So, I mean, if we'd known that, you know, in the planning of the building, and if the building department had said, okay, this is going to be totally rejected
The
on
building
every
department's
level.
responsibility is not to do that. That's what this board's responsibility is to do. We're an aesthetic board. We look at an application, we look at the information that's being presented before this board, all detailed information, and as a board of 5 usually, on a normal and a typical meeting, we, as a board of 5, look at a proposal, look at an application, and we render a decision. The 3 of us have looked at this application, and the 3 of us are saying that there's some issues with this application as it
Yes.
stands.
I perfectly understand that. I mean, you have many, apparently, many issues with it. All I'm saying is that for all the time that Mr. Chiaffi has been to the building department, if anyone had said to us, oh my God, there are so many issues with this design, please, you know, do something about it, we would have. So now, I guess I'm asking about the process, that we finally get to this point and find out, oh my God, this house is totally not in keeping on many, many levels. Not just one thing, not just, you know, an oversized this or an oversized that. And no one ever guided us that we were going down the wrong path, is what I'm trying to say to you people.
I understand your concern, I understand your argument, I understand your statement. The process is the applicant has the responsibility to present to this board his or her design. And we have the responsibility of reviewing it and making our opinion based on the experience that we've had on this board, the time that we've had on this board, the code by which we are governed under, and that's what we're doing this afternoon, or this evening. This evening.
Okay, well, I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public
Wait,
comment?
Excuse me, he's on,
Well,
he
he's-
needs to ask us.
Okay. So you're coming back with another design, at this point, you're asking this board to adjourn so that you can prepare yourself for our next meeting, correct?
Correct.
Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant Gail Belver on Post Lane request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Louise Gould, 104 Lewis Street. For
Why is this an
demolition.
Has this been identified as a parcel of, it's not designated, so are we looking for a possibility of designation? Why is this a certificate of appropriateness
She's
for?
asking for a COA.
She is asking for a demolition permit.
Correct, but it's outside of the historic district.
Correct.
It's part of the Lewis Street.
I get it, I'm just trying to get full
Right,
record.
and in preparing, so it was requested that I prepare a demolition evaluation. And,
Okay.
which I did, which is in the file.
Okay,
And I accompanied that with a letter of explanation, which I thought was appropriate to this particular application. This is one of approximately 60 properties that are in the so-called Lewis Street expansion area, which is listed on the National Registry. And to my knowledge, this is actually the first of those 60 properties, which were so designated in, I believe, 1993, to come before the IRB with a request to demolish. And inasmuch as this particular house, there are other houses on Lewis Street which are not contributing to the historic district, just as our local village districts has some non-contributing properties, so does Lewis Street. So this happens to be one of 60 that does contribute. And so my evaluation for demolition reflects that fact. I felt that it has the potential for meeting 2 of our village criteria for landmarking.
do you want to go over the presentation and your report that you have in file?
Actually, no, I have a copy of that.
And identify what those 2 contributing elements are.
All right, so this is a very brief report. the one page. So apparently the house was built about 1913. So says the National Register District form that was filled out. Subject property is a 1.5-story Dutch colonial-style house distinguished by a gambrel roof form and flaring porch roof surmounted by an upper-story dormer with 3 windows. Window sashes are 6/6 type, appear to be original. A shallow projecting bay window on the south facade is recorded on the Sanborn Atlas of 1926 and is an original feature. Brick chimney is centered on the ridge of the roof. Original shingle wall surfaces have been covered with aluminum siding. Front porch, which is an original feature, has been enclosed with windows and a new front door flanked by side lights aligns with the front wall of the enclosed porch. The architectural integrity is high, and the house is listed as a contributing resource in the Lewis Street expansion area. There are 5 potential or landmark criteria that are enumerated in the village code, and of those 5, I felt that this has the potential for meeting 2. First of which is special character or historic and aesthetic interest or value as part of the cultural, political, social history, etc. of the locality. And the second being that it embodies the distinguishing characteristics of an architectural style. And that's the report. So this doesn't mean that the house cannot receive a permit for demolition. It simply means that there should be a step here to consider whether or not this particular house warrants recognition by the village as a landmark, because it is not in our historic district.
So that the board, as well as the applicant, understands what that process entails. Our historic consultant gives a recommendation that a particular parcel warrants designation. In order for that process to undergo, this board has to set a public hearing by which the community and this board are given information to make the determination whether the house does in fact meet the standards for designation. Our historic consultant is involved in that conversation. We can also hire other individuals to help identify what those elements are. Your responsibility, or the applicant's responsibility, would, if interested in defending against designation, would have to provide means by which you feel that it does not rise to the level or standard of designation based on the reports that have already been produced.
So is this something that we need to address first in advance of our meeting?
If you have something to say or rebuttal to his report or any type of information you can provide which will give substance to this board making a decision on whether to go forward, it would be helpful.
And then from this point forward, it would then go to a public meeting? Am I
This
understanding
board
correctly?
would have to determine on whether, bless you, determine on whether we feel that with the information provided and the information you provided, whether we wish to open the process up for public discussion.
I see. Well, perhaps I can put some more information on the record, and perhaps we can move forward with some decision-making then. I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Gould, property owner of 104 Lewis. My name is Claire Greco, CKG Permit Service. I'm an expediter. Representing before the board this evening the request to demolish the property as it was just identified by your staff member here. The property...
By the way, he's not a staff member. He is a third-party hired historian for this board.
My apologies, no disrespect intended, sir. I was looking for your nameplate. I'm remiss there. My apologies.
It has no voting power.
None whatsoever.
Me neither. Me neither as a...
He doesn't want it either.
All right, well, I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Gould. The application, as you're well familiar with, of course, is the Lewis Expansion Street District. It's my understanding that in the early 80s, although you're indicating 93, it was my understanding that a group of neighbors got together basically to nominate those homes on Lewis Street such that it couldn't become raised property with a view to making it parking and so on, ancillary buildings for the hospital. I think that was the nature and intent. The building historically has been identified in a far greater manner than I'm able to do. What it means to be on the registry is nothing more, however, than what the individual property owners seek to do with their parcels. By being on the registry, They're not bound to renovate or modernize or do any of those restricting things at this point. They are looking to demolish the entire house and the detached garage in the back, which I would doubt has a lot of historical value. In fact, it looks a little, tilt-eyed and so on. And in its place, they are looking to build something very Southampton Village-like, of course, which would be before the board again with greater purview. We're seeking to demolish, and that's the application, in essence. I'm a little unfamiliar with what it means to take it to the public hearing. I do have some familiarity with other homes in the area on the Lewis Expansion Street that have been demoed and rebuilt. There are 2 homes further along that are within the historic district, of course, that are undergoing some renovations, but certainly our proposal for a new construction would be very in keeping with what the board would like to see.
Were you able to look at the evaluation that was provided or listen to?
No, I did not have the opportunity. I did listen, of course.
Okay.
But
So you understand that he identified out of 5 different criteria, there were 2 that rose to the level of consideration for designation.
The age, as defined by the 1913, I'm truly not sure where that time period came from. I have a Suffolk assessment report that dates the house to the early 60s, and it's been in the Gould family since the late 60s. Prior to that, I'm not too familiar, and I wasn't able to plot the home itself on previous aerials. I was trying to determine what portions may have been original, what may have been added, much like your report. But the application, as I'd indicated to you at this point, is for demolition. It is an older aluminium-style home. There's an old, presumably single-pool septic system in the back, which is certainly not as serviceable as one might like to see in current homes. The home does not meet a lot of the energy efficiency standards and so on of a newer home.
You understand that none of those are at all any reason?
I do understand that's not your board's concern, but certainly it should be an environmental...
I don't want to say concern. I'm just saying that when we're, right now, the discussion is whether we should proceed with a public hearing to discuss whether it's going to, this parcel could be identified as a parcel for designation. Whether it's energy efficient,
Understood.
a septic system, all of that, it's irrelevant.
Understood, sir.
And hear me out, unless you're referring to a hardship case, which is something entirely different. What you're saying is that there would be financial duress in making the necessary modifications to the parcel for purposes of keeping it exactly the way it is and modifying it. So that's a hardship case. It's something entirely different. I just want to make sure we understand what the process is.
I understand, sir. I'm not sure I can speak to a hardship case at this point. I'm not that familiar with the situation as far as the dollars and cents go. As I'd indicated, it's a family home. It is up for sale, and it is something that the prospective purchaser would like to see demolished, and they would, in like kind, seek to rebuild on site with an application, again, that would be before your board for the purposes of architecture and so on. Age dating, I mean, the home dates back to the 60s, possibly to the 1913. I've not been able to find anything specifically.
Would you like some time, because it's, before this board makes a decision or ruling, maybe you want to confer with your applicant or with your homeowner and see if he or she wishes to go through the work to get background information and build a case.
So perhaps I should seek an adjournment through until the next hearing then.
Is there any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
Hi, excuse me, my name is Gloria Joseph. I'm the owner of the property just north at 98 Lewis. Sorry about that. I just learned today about the demolition of the dwelling, the proposal coming before you tonight, and I'm concerned about that. When my house went under construction, they had applied for demolition and it was disallowed. So I'm not quite sure why this home would be allowed to be demolished. But at this juncture, because I did not know about this, I wanted to say that already Meeting House Lane is encroaching on the property of 104 Lewis Street, so that the house currently under construction with a pool house and mechanicals is very close to the property line. And so my concern today is just the privacy issue, the house, it being any closer to my property. But right now, the big concern is just hearing about today that there's a proposal to demolish the home.
Okay, thank you. Did you hear the conversation as it pertained to our historic consultant's evaluation? He's identified that at least 2 criteria. The home
That's
is reas-
encouraging.
And this board is going over its decision now. It's a suggestion to the applicant that if they wish to do a little bit more work so they can present before this board before we make a decision
Good.
to move forward with.
Great, I'd just like to know more what's being planned.
Not a problem. Any further public comment? Okay, you asked for your adjournment, so motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant Louis Gould at 104 Lewis Street, request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank
May I
you.
obtain a copy of the report?
It's in the building department, so you can go there tomorrow and get a copy.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Next application, please.
Lauren and Paul Young, 146 Foster Crossing.
All these are gonna be like this.
Hello, Mark Cirillo for AutoGate Systems, representing the homeowners.
Spacing between the pickets.
4 inches.
Pillars are made out of.
They are white painted wood, lead-coated copper caps.
Panelization underneath. Is there any spacing between that, or is it all panelization?
The lower panel is solid, tongue and groove, and spaced pickets as you see in the upper bay.
Any lanterns or anything being proposed to these
Not by
pillars?
us, no, nothing of it.
Brian, any comments?
No, I think it's very appropriate.
Christine?
Nope, I think it's good.
Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application for the driveway gates on Foster Crossing for Lauren and Paul Young.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application,
Thank
please.
you. Good night.
Mark Parrish, 106 Ann's Lane.
Good evening, Mark Parrish, owner, 106 Ann's Lane. Talking here about proposed additions to the house that I live in right now. I'm looking to add a dormer onto the front of the existing house, also a front porch, and a bump out on the side to the existing mudroom.
Also, smaller renderings.
Caught that before.
I already saw this.
Brian, any comments?
No, I think what they're doing is simple additions to the existing house. It looks like they just need more room in the house. I think it's fine.
Christine?
No, I know the house, and I think what they're doing is appropriate.
So it's early. All right. Have no issues. Any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
Good evening again. I would simply like to ask for a postponement of this to give the neighbors a chance to look at the proposal. In fact, I only found out about it today, which may be my negligence, but there are a number of neighbors who would be interested in seeing this. This is the Roscoe Place subdivision, and there's a common plan and scheme to it, and there are covenants. So I'd just like to make sure that we all look at the building department plans. May we ask for that adjournment? Thank you.
Any other public comment? Board members, any issues with the application? There was a request that it be adjourned for others to have the opportunity to review. Do you have any issues with the plans?
No, I don't think there's anything offensive about it that would need to be
Been
seen.
in there for a while.
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application of Mark Parrish at 106 Ann's Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Next application, please.
Next application is Kevin Byrne, 76 Woolley Street.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Byrne, 76 Woolley Street.
Sorry?
My name is Kevin Byrne. I live at 76 Woolley Street. And I'd like to replace my garage.
Christine?
What?
Have you seen these?
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any issues, any questions? You want to go over just the material of the garage match the existing home?
Yeah, it's all wood shingle and...
Same material being used?
Same.
Height of the garage?
I believe it's 14 feet.
And the doors that are being used, all closed? Any windows, any facade, any decorative?
Nothing decorative. It should be on the plan. And the side, I have a couple of sliders because of the depth.
You have sliders in the garage?
Yes.
Okay, so you're occupying it for, I mean, its use is
No, just
irrelevant, but...
if there's a car in there, I want to have access and use of the back. So.
Okay. Any public comment on the application? Anything further from the board?
No.
Motion to approve?
Make a motion that we approve the application on Woolley Street of Kevin Byrne.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Next application, please.
Next application is 70 Pheasant Close East. Have you seen this? Mark Parrish?
Yeah, no, Kevin Byrne.
Kevin Byrne. He's first last. This is going in.
I'm John Laffey. I'm the architect for the owners of the property, and we're proposing to demolish an existing structure that's currently there. It was a house built in the 80s. Nice use of glass block, and I think I have copies of this. So I'll give that to you.
That's more.
Oh, and these are packages of everything you have in the.
Everything matches?
That's correct, yes.
Your duplicates, just smaller renderings, correct?
Just smaller renderings, that's correct. So we're proposing to build a two-story shingle-style residence. Replace the old house. Gables in the front. Has some plating windows, some curving roofs. Something about the window in the front. This is the side facing south. And the back terrace area. And an attached three-car garage inside. And the front door. The house is going to be natural shingles, Eastern red shingles, gray shingles will be on the roof. It'll be left to go natural. There's going to be some brick chimneys on the house. The big Glenberry Danish blend, and that brick will be used in both the terrace work, the chimneys, and also we have some two brick entry piers on the property, which are also in your folder. It's white trim and fascia and soffits. We have shutters on the outside of the house. We currently propose it might be blue, but now I've heard that maybe the clients might want them white. But here. all the columns are, they're square, 12-inch columns, a typical base column cap. The roofs on the lower portions of the entry and the back breakfast area.
Can you turn your model around?
Sure. These are lead-coated copper, both in the front and on the back breakfast area over there, breakfast room.
I'm confused. Tenant the rear.
Shed dormer?
Just the detail.
Is there a conflict? Sure, no.
No, you're showing a metal roof on your drawings, but the model shows it like shingles.
This is metal roof?
No,
here?
the shed on the
Shed.
top.
Tops.
Third, yeah.
Missed that, sorry.
It's okay.
It's a
Just,
metal roof.
okay.
I think the house is consistent with the neighborhood and the streetscape in the area. This is a streetscape map I produced that shows the houses. My client's house is currently exists right here. And this is the this is where it fits. We're leaving the driveways where they are. So you can see we took it from Pheasant Close. There's the old there's like 3-story, 2.5-story, 3-story house here. This is my client's house. This is my client's proposed new house area. The adjacent neighbor is here. It's a gable structure. The adjacent neighbor after that is a much more contemporary, larger house.
You remember.
Yeah. After that is another sort of a larger gabled structure house. And 108 Pheasant Close, he's really kind of faces more on Pheasant Close North. So his front of his house faces that, so we just have the garage on our side of the street. All the homes there are approximately, looks like they're fairly, around the maximum, the height is what I would have to say. And I think all the homes are essentially, if not larger than my client's house, certainly as large from a massing perspective, like my opinion. As part of the plan that we've done a sort of a quasi landscape plan. Rich, the client wants to write down sort of a hodgepodge of this is about arborvitaes and all kinds of things that just been overgrown there. And there's each of these properties currently has about 5 street trees on them. We want to take all the existing landscaping down in the front and put a row of either privet and or arborvitae that'll go behind the street trees. It's very similar if you look down Pheasant Close. West has it, and going down towards south. That type of privet line goes behind all the street trees. So we're trying to reinforce that edge. We have 2 gate piers. We have a gate design, which is not part of this application, but you might want to look at it just because maybe have it there. The existing property is surrounded by a series of privet that I'd say reasonably have to be about 20 feet tall. And I'd say probably 4 to 5 feet thick. Probably first engaged when the property was first built. So it's fairly quiet. It's fairly sheltered on all sides. Obviously, just where I'm doing the tennis court there, but we're certainly have privet as per the requirements of the plan.
So this isn't showing any landscaping on the property, just the perimeter.
Just really wanted to talk about the landscaping around the front facade to show that the client wants some privacy. He wants about 10-foot privet. It'll basically match the adjacent neighbor's property. The adjacent neighbors have about 10 feet of their privet. He was thinking maybe more like arborvitae, something a little more private.
The gates would have to be a separate application.
No, it's all part of the one application.
Is it
I
all
didn't, the gate's
included
not
in
part of
this?
this application.
I'm sorry?
The piers would be, but not the gate. I didn't really have time to focus on the gate, although it is open as you like, but it's not part of this application today.
It just says pool house
Just-
and driveway piers.
Piers, yeah.
Okay.
And the piers are, they're
So you'll
7'6".
be coming back with the gates at another meeting.
Yes, I'm gonna
Yeah.
come back from the gate in the meeting.
The piers that are being proposed, does that include the lanterns, or will that be a part of the application for driveway gates?
It's got the piers.
Can I just do the piers and not do the lanterns?
That's why I'm asking for
Yes.
specifics.
No lanterns,
No
just
lanterns.
the piers themselves.
Okay.
Come back with the gates.
Brian, comments?
When I first saw that house, I thought it was really busy, and, but now seeing the model, I can see it being toned down quite a bit. I still think that the big mass on top of the front door is a little bit overdone. That's just, yeah.
Just a way to try and bring in additional light. This little terrace in front of it, this is a two-story cathedral space. It's not accessible by anybody. And it was just a big opportunity to try and get more light into the upper foyer area.
Well, you'll get tons of light.
Are you saying that it's too much?
I think so, yeah.
I do too. I think the mass over the front door, it spoils the harmony of the rest of the house.
Did you propose, or were you thinking of any other style other than all the panelization, the large copper, eyebrow,
Oh, they saw this,
line?
they basically
Then you
saw
have
this
your
design
front
up.
covered porch. Is that an accessible deck or a non-accessible deck?
It's a non-accessible.
How high is the railing? I know it's decorative and that's fine, but from here it looks like it more ties into what would be related to a second-story deck. The entryway it looks grand, what you wish for it to look, but it may be too much considering especially the mass of the home.
So we tried to keep the roof line below the top of the corbel gable, so trying to create another line, another
Mhm.
horizontal line across the across the front facade. And the clients just they've seen a very similar entry in a house over here in the village on can't remember the street, but
In the village?
yeah, in the village. Remember the street, sorry. We can try and tone it down if you like, but the idea was to try and make something,
Well,
Well,
there's
part of
two
it-
things you said. You said you had the windows there for light. Is it for light, for get more true light in the home? Or
Yes.
is it for the appearance of the grand look?
to get more light. This is a two-story entrance
So
entry space into the house.
then toning down the overall grandness shouldn't be an issue.
It's, I'd say probably not. No, we could probably do something to,
Anything else? Any issues with regards to the design of the home, materials being used?
No, I think it's a beautiful house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just point something?
You sure can.
Minor point, I know it's late.
Okay.
I just find that the oval windows, I think they work better in the model.
I know,
But the oval
there's so
windows-
many of them, yeah.
And because they're the same size on all three floors, I know that's an attic story, but I mean, it's the same window. So there's almost like a stock window feeling to it, that it doesn't, to me, the windows should change as you go up on the facade. And yet, you've got 4 of them on the first floor. I'm just looking at the front facade. And then the 2 on the second story, and then the identical windows appear in the pointed gables of those 2. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To me, those kinds of windows might want to get a little smaller or change a little bit as the facade goes up. It just seems to be lack of design being associated with them. They're like sort of out of the catalog.
Okay, we can certainly,
Even to eliminate a couple like these two, it's almost too many of those.
Anything else, Brian?
No.
Now that, to be honest with you, it dulls it. I don't, you're saying eliminating? Eliminating the curve?
I'm just playing.
I know, I think the tone down would be more appropriate than the elimination of it. There's still an entryway there. And I think what happens is because it's so front heavy, there should be a pronounced entry place. So any public comment? Anything further from the board? So you'll come back at our next meeting with some of the suggestions that we have placed this evening, correct?
yes, I will.
All right, and you're asking this board to adjourn so we can prepare that?
Yes, I am.
All right, motion to adjourn. Motion to approve the
I make a motion that we
applicant's.
approve the applicant from 70 Pheasant Close East LLC request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, change. Welcome back. Okay, next application, please.
Frank DeVito, 98 Powell Avenue.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Renee Rontali, McDonough Conway Architects. I have a small set of board members. Find it. Just hand it off. These are the 3 front elevations, and this is a full set.
Okay.
Base.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I like this one.
And just have one
Surprised.
solid rendering.
Yes.
Are we going to belly hands up?
I don't know. It's
Too late.
This is like a late night.
Thank you.
I only have one color rendering, Mr. Chairman. The application before you is to construct a new 2-story home, which meets the current height and the parking regulation that was adopted in the village. The house is approximately 3,300 square feet on 2 floors, approximately 37 feet wide. The basic exterior materials are cedar shingles, left natural, cedar roof, and we do have a small front entry that has a copper roof on it that you will see in that rendering. And to us, it's very,
I don't have any problem with it, is it?
Just Powell Avenue, I'm not sure. Where on?
to us, because of its proximity to a sort of nearby commercial area and the railroad station, we feel that it fits the street.
Is that a second story deck in the rear?
No, sir. We took it out already.
Sorry?
We took it out already. It
Take
was
it out.
supposed to be a deck. It was taken out before this meeting.
How high is the, okay, so that's just,
It's a roof on it.
It's a roof line.
Yeah, it used to be a deck before the application.
appreciate that.
Not a problem. So,
You can continue on, but I don't think there's any issue with the board. Any public comment on the application? Brian, comments?
I think it's really well done.
Christine?
No comment, thank you.
thank you.
Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application of Frank DeVito at 98 Howell Avenue.
Oh.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good day.
Next application, please.
Next application is 51 Gin Lane LLC.
I'm Michael Berenger, architect for the applicant. I have a couple things to pass up to you. I don't know if you'd like individual copies of the surveys or if you use the ones in the file.
2 copies are fine if they're not. Are these copies that we do not have in the file?
I have a tax map that you may want, just 3 copies for now. I can give one to Zach. And I have the 11 by 17 copies of plans. And you don't want copies for the other board members at this time? Yeah.
Brian, Nisha?
Thank you. So this is one of the times when I get to work on a project that I kind of look forward to. I've worked for the owners of this property on other projects before. They currently live on Cooper's Farm, and they're longtime residents here and very aware of the history of the estate section. And their dream was to build a house in the estate section, and a property came up on Gin Lane, and we've designed a substantial home on the property, and it's very much responding to the history, I believe, of the village of Southampton. There are a lot of inspiration homes that we looked at. Keewaydin was one. We couldn't quite do that type of style because that's a 44-foot high home, and you need the proportion to do that. Longview was one that we looked at and found elements of that we liked. And you know, I worked closely with the owners on this, and it's I think it's a timeless kind of traditional style home that is somewhat in the federal style, more technically in the colonial revival style. The idea here is that in 5 years, when this house weathers a little bit, people might wonder whether it's a restoration or a new home or not. You know, we're not trying to be trendy here. We're not doing anything that is current. It's old-time classical architecture, and we benefit from the neighborhood having 14 to 16 foot high hedges all the way around. You can see from the photographs that I tried to take pictures of the neighboring homes, and you end up with just beautiful 4 foot thick hedges all the way up and down the street. And that's what we propose to do here. We're not trying to be out of character. We are in the estate section, and I think we have proposed a home that has appropriate style, and it fits all the criteria of the village, and it's something we're very kind of excited about and hope that some discussion with the board will be beneficial tonight. So I don't know if you want me to go further than that, but that's my opening remarks.
Since you brought up the style and the attempts of mimicking a historic home, Zach, do you have the file in front of you?
Yes.
Okay.
I
would like to know your interpretation or your...
This is the first I've seen it, so.
These are the 1/8 scale elevations of the house, so it's a little bit larger picture. All of the shingles would be natural cedar roof and side walls. All of the trim would be white, the dentil, the fascias, the rakes, all very pronounced, and somewhat like the photographs that I submitted to you, and like the drawings. You know, just try to do something that's kind of timeless here, and it's an approach that I think is appropriate in the estate section.
I guess my only concern would be, I'm afraid that it may be, it's a large, you know, it's a large house,
Mhm.
and it presents as a large house, and I mean, it's a nice sized piece of property. It's 1.1 acres, but I wonder if the scale of the house is right to the size of the lot. Because it really occupies, at least if I'm
Well,
reading
The full
it
sky
properly.
What, one of the things that we've
Sorry?
done,
It's right at the pyramid.
one of the things that we did on this property is that obviously the first 80 feet of the property, we do no development because that's the setback. Then we used about 110 feet for the development of the house, and the rear 160 feet of the property is undeveloped. So we kind of condensed our development into the center portion of the property. The eastern side of the property has a house that was built in the 80s that is about 3,700 or 3,800 square feet. To the west, there's a 50-foot flag lot that provides some buffer, and we located our driveway and garage operation on that side so as to stay away from the neighbor on the east. There are just 30-foot setbacks on either side, but again, that whole idea of when you walk into that neighborhood, what you see and what you feel is that hedgescape that's there. They're just perfect. Everybody's in competition to have the most beautiful 14 to 16-foot high hedges, and you really can't even see the homes, and that's what we would like to do there, to follow suit with that landscaping buffer that everyone benefits from. The homes on the north side of Gin Lane are, the property sizes are about the same. You have a couple of lots that are 1.6, but when you take away their 50-foot flag lots, everybody there is dealing with about an acre or 1.2 acres.
Just wanted to let you know, that's kind of sad that everyone's striving for 14, 15-foot hedges so we can't see homes.
Well,
It just like takes away all of
when
any
you bring
feel of
people here to
community
visit,
at all.
when you bring people here to visit, how do you show them these beautiful
I
estates?
stop and I walk up to the gate
Yeah.
and I say, this is the house. We've taken away all of the scenery of community. It's just, no, I'm not critiquing you and your app. I'm just saying that
I was born in
as a community.
Southampton,
Yeah.
Mr. Highsmith, so I do understand. But I think in this instance, that it's appropriate for us to, we already have those privet surrounding this property. and
Not
we just
critiquing
feel-
your project. I'm saying
No, I understand.
as it relates to
Well,
what seems to
I mean, what you
be
did with
the
solid-
norm now that we have
solid
to.
gates, you said, let's not have these solid gates, it's like walls.
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
And I'd love to be able to go on the property and photograph some of these houses, but I'm not allowed to.
Absolutely.
That's why we love it in the winter here.
Yeah, it thins out a little bit.
Yes.
I mean,
Days are gone.
It's just real sad.
We
It's just a
are-
sad testament.
We are very, very serious with the style and the scale and the scope of this project. My client has his heart set on this, and he doesn't realize that it is not a done deal. And I told him, nothing is a done deal in the village these days. But we feel that if in 5 or 10 years somebody looked at this house, they might think that it was a 50 or 60-year-old house. We're not trying to imitate an antique, but we're trying to, propose something that will not be something that was trendy or no criticism of other architecture, but just something that's not trendy.
Zach? We want to get over the traditional historic part of it before we.
My only comment is really that I'm just concerned that it's a bit overscaled for the property. I don't have any
Wide.
quarrel with the architecture. You would have fooled somebody, except in 60 years. Except for your large, well, it's kind of a 30s window above your front doorway, which is kind of interesting. It gives it more of a 30s colonial revival feel, than that big window.
Mm-hmm.
It is cool. It's not
I mean,
supposed to look like it was built
Many
in the
bedrooms.
Sorry?
It's in the two-story foyer, so it's
Yep.
above
No,
that
it's
front
fine.
door.
It's fine.
Please don't say
It's
it.
sort of modern.
Please don't.
If you know who is there.
I know. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I have no problems with the house at all. I can share what Zach says, the house is a little wide. Just a couple of things. Would you consider making your chimneys taller?
Yes.
Because I think, you know, I would love to see this house taller.
Mhm.
And I think getting some more height out of the chimneys might be good. And maybe the dormers are a little on the larger side,
We
but I
could-
don't know.
We actually, on the pool house, which is not such a concern, we pulled the dormers back a little bit and we lowered them from the ridge, and we were actually kind of, there's no function to the third story on this house. There's no staircase that goes up.
Yeah. It just seems your windows are larger than the windows on the second floor in terms of their width. And I just think that's throwing that roof off a little bit, so.
I would be more than happy to scale down.
Scale those down and raise up the
Dormers
chimneys,
down.
I think would help it a lot.
One thing I would mention is that we are not doing a finished basement in this house. We have a kind of a floodplain issue, so not that the board deals with basements, but in the past it's come up, so what you see is what you see. There's no third story and there's no finished basement here. So this is the whole house, and that's one of the reasons that it is in this area. It was important for them to get a certain program, and when we balanced out the basement, and they just didn't want to deal with the moisture and the potential
Then that's
problem.
more reason to make the dormers smaller because they're not
Yeah.
egress windows.
I can scale down the dormers and raise the chimneys. Does the front window, Brian, do you have concern with that, the center
You know,
window?
it popped out at me right away, but I think it's okay, you know, once you look at the plans.
Okay.
If you can, you think you can present at the next meeting just a color rendering? Because I know there are going to be some, I know at least one board member who's not here would look at this and say, I would want to see some more depth in terms of style.
Well, there's no real, I can do what I can do. There's no color on this. It's natural materials and white.
Okay, so you can do a rendering, which is gives a little
I don't have, right now, I
three-dimensional
don't
rendering or
have, I
something.
don't have an employee or a technical person that can do that for me, but if that's part of your requirement, I can try to figure out how to do that.
I have a good person who you can work with.
I would-
We'll talk later.
Okay.
And he's got a
I
4.0.
mean, you know, one of the
Any
things,
public comment?
you know, I just felt that it's not a complicated,
It's not a
application.
complicated application. I'm
Right.
just trying to spearhead what
Esther,
probably will
right.
happen at our next meeting. I'm trying to give you a little,
Right.
because at least one board member is going to say, and then it lays it over to another meeting, and then, you know, if you're prepared at the next meeting, it just makes things a little
Okay.
more seamless.
Okay, no, that would be fine.
Anything further from the board? Any public comment? So you'll be at the next meeting with just
Yeah.
some more information.
Yeah.
Asking this board to adjourn so they can prepare.
Yeah, and I'll just summarize, the indication was if we elevated the chimneys, would give it a more vertical proportion and diminish the width and the height of the dormers, would help diminish their importance on the facade.
Yeah.
And if we can provide you with a color rendering, that would be preemptive of some possible.
It will be approved, yes, it will.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Motion
Zach.
to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
Motion that we approve the applicant of 51 Gin Lane LLC to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Thanks.
Next application is 72 Elm LLC for pool house. Okay. I had to wait all night for this.
I'm sorry you had to wait for all night for this. This should have been one of the first applications.
Really fun.
It's been
Yeah.
fun.
Do this every month.
You need to,
I looked at this.
we've seen
Yeah.
this, yeah. Any public comments on the, we can go further if you want, if you,
This is adorable, this
Oh,
little
thanks.
house. I mean, it's great.
Aren't you nice?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a folly.
I love the little finials on the top, too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
any
very
public
much.
comment? Anything from the board? Motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the application at 72 Elm Street for the accessory pool house.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And our final application for this evening.
Lawrence Cirillo?
Yes.
94 Corrigan Street.
Right, so I'm Lawrence Sirlon. Just before Jeff goes into the technical, I wanted to mention, this is on Corrigan Street. It's a subject that you're very familiar with. I bought the Gregor house in 2013. It was a 1956 ranch. There's no landscaping, nothing had been done to it. My wife and I fixed it up. We basically gut rehabbed the house because it was not livable at that time. And we weren't quite sure what we wanted to do with the house. It's now 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, and we need to expand it. But in the interim, we landscaped the lot pretty heavily. The pool is in the back. We have privet along the sides and the front and the back. There's a hedge, hornbeam hedge. It's about 15 feet tall now. And in connection with these plans, we walked around to our neighbors. We knocked on all the doors on the street. We're next to the vacant lot, which is next to the Cuomo's, to give you a sense of perspective on the street. And we're 2 doors down from 114, which has been the subject of a lot of debate before this board. We're across from John Foster. Jeff has designed this, I'll let him go into the details, but wanted to give you the color about why we're here, what we're looking to do. We lived with the house for 3 years to see what the light was in the morning, how our family used the property, where we wanted to put a kitchen, where we thought we needed space, and this is the result of those deliberations.
Hi. Good evening, members of the board. This is an application to add to an existing house. We are not tearing down the house that is there. We are only taking down the garage and incorporating it into the new home. The house sits a little funny on the lot. It's cranked to the way the property line runs, but it's set up with the street. So we can't really go anywhere on the sides, so we didn't. We went up. We have 3 bedrooms up there, a master bedroom and 2 other bedrooms, each with its own bath. We have a recessed balcony, which you may not like, or may like, in the back, off the master bedroom. It's only 6 feet wide. There's also a kitchen wing that extends out approximately 20 feet, and a pergola beyond that. And to replace the existing garage, we're building a new detached garage to that side of the property. Works with parking. We also tried in the roof style of this house to make the second floor, because if I just used the first floor footprint and went over it, it was too big. So the, you want these?
I just need to see the roof thing.
Yeah.
Better. I'm just trying to read the hip roof and how that, I mean,
It's hipped on 4 sides.
okay.
Or it's gambrelled, I should say, on
Gambrelled.
4 sides. The 2 sides have 1 dormer, and the back and front have 2 dormers, 1 on each side of the main body.
By the way, I don't have an issue with the Juliet balcony in the rear.
No. Jeff, explain the railing to me. It doesn't look like it meets code.
Well, that
Is
is
it Chippendale, or is it?
Chippendale, and it's meant to have a flower box in it. It's only
Okay.
2 feet high. You can't get out onto that. And that window goes into a stair hall, so it's not
Right.
ever going to become a door.
Jeffrey's talking about the one in front.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have a building, not a 12 box. Yeah.
Oh, pergola, yeah. Well,
No.
in the there's a part that's got.
You guys can't, we can't get that on record, so if you,
Sorry.
it's okay.
Larry, this up here.
Right.
In Washington House.
This is just
Oh,
giving
did it?
them a
Yes.
higher ceiling.
We're not gonna put a flower box in
Any
there.
garage.
It's just a round.
It's just a decorative railing.
So it's just an architectural feature.
Why do we have a dormer on the garage?
Is this
on
an
the-
architectural feature?
Just to make it a little more than a shed roof.
Brian?
I think it's a really nice renovation. I think you did a great job. I mean, the front facade is, that front gable section is very flat.
Well,
So-
actually, it seems flat, and it's hard it's going to curve back in.
I'm talking about that,
Well, it has a shingle rake,
right?
shingled rake, and that was the only place where we didn't have, that's the only place we have returns.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to keep it simple.
Yeah, I guess you don't pick up the shingled rake,
Yeah,
so
you
might sort of
can't.
it's blending in,
It's very hard to render.
right?
See it.
See
Yeah,
how
see
it's
it's
turning in,
Yeah.
so,
It also-
so that gives it a little more
also curves
depth.
out at the top,
Yeah.
and there's that shingle line that comes across, so it slopes down where that round window is.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
it curves around into the window that's above the front door.
One
Have
thing
no
I don't
issue.
like is
Un-
Hmm?
Unlike a design that we saw earlier in the same street, I don't think it presents as this huge, overly developed, massive structure on the site.
Yeah, it feels
You
like a
have
cottage, so.
substance, you have substance, but it's just not, it's such a large presentation on the street, and I don't have any issue with the application as submitted. Do you, Brian?
No.
Christine?
I'm fine with that.
fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any public comment on the application?
My pants are the only ones left in the office.
You wanna
Oh, okay,
complain,
sorry,
Larry?
well-
This worked out fine.
I just want to mention, it
Wait,
turns out
who's
Jeff and I
that?
went to grammar school together.
Oh, that's so
Oh,
funny.
okay. Motion
Small
to-
world.
Motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the application
back?
of Lawrence Ciriello on Corrigan Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Hmm?
Good luck.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, I don't, no, it's not.
Thanks again.
Very
We
well.
have another gentleman waiting.
There's nothing else to, well, we have open discussion. The the meeting of October 12th, that is Columbus Day. I asked the board, you see the length of our agenda, to cancel the meeting and would only add to
Have it on
it.
Tuesday.
So, the recommendation is that we change the meeting till Tuesday, October 13th. Do you have any issues with that?
Just that I'm not here on Tuesdays,
You won't be here?
unless I can rearrange my schedule, which
No.
I can work
You
on.
know, there's a chance that I might not be here, but I won't know yet.
Okay, so let's table it for now. How much time do we need in order for us to post?
We need to do it now.
Kind of sort of have to do it now, don't we?
I mean, it says October 13th, submit by September 11th, so aren't we already past it?
We're already past it.
Okay, as of right now, there's no meeting, unfortunately then. If we don't approve it this evening, then there's no meeting.
Esther won't be here then, or?
Chances are, no.
Well,
No.
Esther might not. Is she here?
I don't believe so.
No, so
But
then
we're
if
not
I'm
in a-
not here.
We're not in a position
that's-
to
yeah.
answer for her, so since I don't have an answer, we're just gonna have to, it is what it is, and unfortunately, that may mean
Is
that.
it too late for us to do it? Oh, no, we,
I don't.
All right, so we'll have to table that. Minutes from August 10th, were we all present?
Brian wants it.
Okay. Minutes from August 20th.
I'm sorry.
No, I was here the 10th, not the 24th.
The 10th were approved.
10th were already approved.
Done. Yeah.
But you were not here the 24th.
Right.
Motion to close this evening's meeting.
I make a motion that we close the meeting on September 14th, 2015 of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
Good night.